this was the most powerful experience I have ever had in my life. And I've had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
I've had a coma. I've had accidental past life regression experiences. I've had 42 ayahuascas. I've had a countless number of other psychedelic experiences. And this microdosed psilocybin, literally a nibble. And this was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt so grounded. I've never felt so centered. I've never felt so re-inspired. I've never felt so clear in my mission, and that the path that I'm walking is not the highest path. The path that I'm walking is the creation path. It's higher than the highest path. It exists because I'm walking it. And that was clear. And that's never been clear to me in anything else I've done.
This podcast is with my brother, Mehcad Brooks, who is an actor. He's currently a lead on Law & Order. He's also Jax in Mortal Kombat. You may have seen him in many films. He's also a musician. But more importantly than that, he is my fucking brother in this life, in every other life beyond this life. And we get to share stories of an initiatic pilgrimage to Egypt. And we take our time and we tell these unbelievable stories that may actually be unbelievable when you listen. So I invite you to listen with an open mind and an open heart, and feel free to bring your full amount of skepticism for everything we share, because it really is out of this world. And part of that is because we were with an otherworldly being, Matias de Stefano, who remembers his past lives. And when I ask him what his job is in this world, he says, I'm a portal. And he portaled us to some unbelievable places where myself and Mehcad, two long-time, multi-decade psychonauts, both had the most powerful experiences of our lives. So we're here to tell the stories, to open our hearts, and to share the pilgrimage that we went on, the lessons, and our commitment to actually serve the world in the best way that we know how. Well, Mehcad, my brother, we have a cornucopia, a feast of things that we can talk about.
Let's dig in.
Let's dig in.
Yeah, I mean, holy shit. There's so much. There's so much, man.
There's so much. So we just got back from Egypt like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're here in Montana now.
Mm-hmm.
Just had an unbelievable summit with Fit for Service.
You did.
You dropped some fire knowledge to the squad about chaos and about our quantum existence.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, brother.
It's an honor.
It was an honor for all of us to have
Thank
you share your wisdom like that.
Thank you.
And then there's a million things we could talk about that happened in the last few years since we actually had a podcast. But
it's been a while, yeah.
I think since it's fresh, let's just go into Egypt, man. Because Egypt fucks.
Egypt fucks.
Egypt fucks.
Egypt fucks souls. And I don't mean like I mean like it fucks with souls.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes love to souls. It shares intimacy with souls. Like I don't think this is going to be a strong statement, but I think that perhaps every human soul has gone through Egypt at some point in time in the last 100,000 years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It feels familiar to everybody.
There's a richness there that's mind-blowing. In the backdrop of Egypt, I mean, Egypt's an intense place, like just the nature of it. And then it also has the antiquity element of it, this history of spiritual practices that you can feel have been real. Guardians of the temples, the gods and goddesses that have been actualized either because they were original from Genesis or they've been actually called forth by the worship itself for these thousands of years to coalesce this particular formation and pattern of energy. And call it Osiris or call it Horus or call it Isis. But there's many names in many cultures for these archetypal energies. But Egypt has a particular signature to these beings and these energies that we got to experience. And part of the reason we got to experience it is, yes, we're open to such things. This is part of our practice, part of our life. But we also happen to be with Matias motherfucking Stefano.
Unbelievable. Like just an oracle in a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, oh, so you're a whole complete oracle that also makes crazy jokes. And like, and eats a lot of cake. And like, he's just going to Egypt with Matias. I would imagine has to be like going to, rural France with Joan of Arc or something. I just don't even know how to explain it. It's something else.
It's really indescribable.
Yeah.
And I want to jump to a moment to explain a moment where Matias got real for you in particular, you and our brother Justin. So we're going a little bit out of order here, because there was first the Temple of Isis, and I want to tell some Temple of Isis stories. The Temple of Philae, which was one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen on the face of this earth. Like, and in Vailana, I got to do a sound healing in the courtyard, the first ever amplified sound healing. I mean, an amazing job. Also, mad respect to the Daybreaker crew and
killed it.
Rada and
Mickey,
Eli,
like
the whole crew really killed it.
They all killed it.
So we're going to skip over the first temple on the initiatic path, which is the Temple of Isis, with a little asterisk and a footnote that we'll go back and talk about the Temple of Isis. But we're gonna talk about the second temple, and it was Cumumbro. And this is a temple where there's a master of unity and also darkness and shadow.
Duality.
Yeah. And Matias is going, and I'll start the story, and then it'll get to the part where your story really kicks in. I'll start the story where Matias is channeling. He's got like a shroud over his head, and he's channeling this being, and the being is calling everybody out. Calling people out for being liars, not being authentic, claiming true love, and not participating in true love, participating in the games of duality, in the intentional ignorance of our unity, right? So he's calling, but it's interesting because Matias, English is a second language, and the channel's coming through, and it's coming through to inform us. So it's coming through in English because he wants to teach us. The being that's coming through him wants to teach us. But it's weird.
It's not Matias's English.
No.
Right. It's a different. It's a being translating whatever their native tongue is into that
into Matias's second language of English.
Right. And it's unbelievable. Like, he uses words he doesn't use normally.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that he doesn't have a mastery of, and you can tell that you're in the presence of something happening, just energetically and vocally. Frankly, like it's there for your ears to hear. Yeah.
So he leads us through, winding through the halls of this temple, going to all the secret spots, and he finally ends up in this kind of standing crypt thing, and Vailana's singing behind him, and he's saying wild shit, and then he just books and takes off, right? And typically I'm like right on his heels because I want a part of that magic, but I could feel the group like, what the fuck just happened? So I was like, I got to bring this thing together.
And he ran right by you.
Yeah.
And so everybody's looking, and then their eyes just kind of fall on you.
Yeah.
And you're like,
yeah. So I was like, all right.
Like,
so
I brought him. So let me close this up.
I'm partially responsible. I'm mostly responsible for this. So I'm going to try and wrap this up in a little bow so everybody can go to sleep tonight. Yeah. And so I just guide people through a little meditation, a little om. And then you and Justin go with Matias behind the temple. And this was an experience that only you guys were there. So I'm going to let you take off and tell this story from here to just give a flavor of the gravitas of what we were fucking dealing with in Egypt.
Let me preface this story by saying, you may not believe me. I also don't care if you believe me. I wouldn't believe me if I wasn't there. Let me just preface it by saying that, because it's very present and very true. So Matias finishes channeling and runs. He runs off. Like, he literally runs off. you start handling the closure of that channeling ceremony. Let's call it that. And I'm in presence of that. And then but something in my awareness goes, go with him. I said, okay. So I take off, with purpose towards the direction he went. And he went behind the temple to this huge wall of hieroglyphics. And I see him with his hand on the wall, squatting or kneeling. And I see this guard behind him trying to talk to him. And the guard is realizing that he's not responding. So the guard steps back, in reverence, frankly, because I think he understands what's happening. And then something told me to go kneel on Matias's left side behind him. And Matias, or let's say whoever he was channeling, kind of looks towards me, acknowledges me respectfully, and I keep my distance, and I'm just kind of there holding space. And then the next thing I know, my hand goes up and I'm pulled to the wall like a magnet. I didn't walk. I didn't have a lot of free will in that moment. My hand went up and it drew my hand to the wall onto a certain hieroglyph, and it stuck me there. And I let go. I surrendered to that experience, and then some chanting started coming out of me, and Matias is chanting. And this is when I notice Justin Rezvani on the right side of Matias behind him. And he has his hand on the wall, and he's just kind of feeling things, and we're all just there and holding space. And
it's just you three in the guard.
Just us three in the guard. At this point in time, Matias is getting louder with his channeling, and the guard is stepping back. And
this is like midnight, by the way. Just to set the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why we went to a temple
at midnight
of duality.
At midnight.
But
that's where we were at midnight.
I highly recommend and don't recommend this at all. And so we're there, and the next thing I know, as my chanting, like I'm self-conscious about what I'm doing. I'm like, am I doing something? Am I being an actor right now? Am I adding my own flavor to this? Like, what's happening?
Right.
Because I've really never had that happen. But I remember Matias gave a talk early on. You and Matias gave a talk early on, conversation on the boat. And Matias talked about, that we are the AI of the mineral world, right? Particularly psyllium, which can talk back, right? Our cell phones have them, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I guess I'm talking to the minerals. And I felt a little something. I felt, almost like a recognition or an acknowledgement from the minerals in the temple.
Yeah, the consciousness of the atomic wall, the atomic structure of the walls themselves.
Right.
The silica, the quartz, all of that.
When you're speaking on an atomic level, everything's alive.
Yeah.
Right? And so the atoms in me were communicating with the atoms of the temple. Mm-hmm. I've come to understand it that way and accept it that way. All of a sudden, and this is the part you don't have to believe, and I wouldn't if I wasn't there myself, the wall started vibrating like a speaker at a concert. Like if you ever put your hand on a really big speaker and it's like that. It feels almost malleable, like a trampoline, all of a sudden. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Next thing I know, Matias yells, he gets thrown back with his feet in the air. Like his feet, like it's funny actually, because it's like a Steve Martin comedy. He's like, ah! Like he's got his hand on the wall. Next thing I know, it's vibrating. Next thing I know, he's shot back. His feet are like this, like next to my shoulders. He lands on the ground maybe 10 feet back, slides, and as soon as he hits the ground, all the lights went out. I was like, did he land on a light switch? Like, I was like, wait, what? I make movies for a living. I make TV shows for a living. this would take 5 or 6 takes for people to get right. You know what I'm saying? Like it felt like being on a movie set where everything just happened perfectly. And I'm sitting here looking for the director, like, cut, like what? Like, and Justin goes, oh my God. And I go, holy shit. The security guard goes, oh my God. Like he starts praying to Allah. I'm not kidding. He's like, he's going nuts. Matias is recovering. We go to him. We try to lift him up. He can't. He doesn't. He's like coughing and like hacking and like, you know, burping and all these things are coming out of him. His eyes are not back yet. Like they're in the top of his head. And we're trying to lift him up and he's just like not quite there. Then we finally get him up and the guard comes over and goes, Monsieur, you okay? You okay? And Matias goes, yeah. And he starts burping and coughing more and like he's coming back. He's coming back and then we're holding him up and Justin and I are like, did we see what we just saw? Did the wall just throw him 10 feet that way? And it's when he hit the ground, the lights went off. And it wasn't like all the temple lights went off. It was just the lights where we were.
Yeah.
It's like 3 big lights that were lighting up the wall and lighting up where we were. They all went off and they didn't come back on. And the rest of the temple lights were on. So call it what you will. I felt like something came out of Matias and jumped back into the wall, and that caused
a kinetic reaction of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was the part. So when I saw Justin after that, like you've traversed.
I've seen crazy shit.
You've traversed the psychedelic threshold and traveled through many dimensions, seen a lot of shit. So you were kind of, your mind was blown, but you were also holding it with kind of like a smile and kind of like a, God, that was some fucking shit. Mm-hmm. Justin was just wide-eyed, like the first time someone saw a UFO or like a ghost or some shit.
Like I had to hold Justin up on the walk back. Like he was wobbling. Like he almost fainted. Look, I've seen things that I can't explain since I was a kid. And I've seen things I can't explain, but this was in the realm of top 5, top 10, where I was like, the magic is real.
Yeah,
magic is real. There was a kinetic response. There was minerals communicating. There was a being communicating through him. I saw a kinetic response from the wall, felt it, saw him get shot back, propelled back 10 feet. Like I thought he hurt himself. That's not somebody throwing themselves back for performative reasons. Like he could have hurt himself. Like really, like I was like, oh my God. Like this is like poltergeist. They just whooped his ass. I was like, oh shit. Like it was I was like, is he okay? You know?
And
it's unbelievable.
That's what fucked with Justin the most. The thing is, because Justin's a psychonaut as well, and we've done ayahuasca together, and you see things in your visions, but you're like, okay, it's cool when they're in the visions, and
it's in this
other realm
possibilities
of of things that you see, and maybe emotions that you can feel, maybe a little heat in your hands, or maybe, but those can all be expressed by like just different blood flow patterns and things.
You can explain all those away.
You can explain all those away, but what really fucked with him was that you couldn't explain this away, and it crossed the threshold of Newtonian physics, where at a certain point, that's not, in his mind, that's not supposed to be possible, where it's like you can have this whole visionary quantum realization of possibility in that state, but then when it crosses the threshold where actually weight, matter, is being dispelled.
Yeah.
That's where it got really, that's where it shifted a whole worldview. And I think still, I wasn't there for it, but I wish I was in some regards, but I also don't have a difficult time actually believing that. Yeah. But for someone like Justin, it was like, he has to integrate that by either isolating that as an incident and explaining it away as if it didn't happen, or weave it into his worldview. And that's what integration really is. It's like, can you weave this new truth into your entire worldview so that now the possibility that magical, if you want to call it, or psychic or ethereal forces can
Quantum.
actually move matter.
Right.
Can move matter in the 3D.
Well, it was like watching a grand scale, like this incredibly grand collision of quantum mechanics on a scale that you could see.
Yeah.
These were atoms colliding with something that caused this reaction. And you're just like, what took him from here to there? That's not a human being's ability to jump backwards that way and also try to keep themselves safe. Like that like he could have really hurt himself if he was just doing that for our benefit.
Right.
And I don't know anybody who would do that in their right mind, right?
Yeah.
Like and like he skid.
Yeah.
Like something threw him. And I was standing right next to him. And I felt the impact. And I felt the wind get knocked out of him. I heard it. It's like, hoo-ah! I was just like, wow. And I felt the wall vibrating. So there's just nothing that I can do to try to explain it away. I have to weave this into my worldview, which is somehow, in some ways, regrettably not so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've seen so much, but at the same time, I feel blessed to have seen that.
Yeah.
I feel completely blessed to have seen that.
Sure. It reminds me of that. It's like in that Patrick Swayze Ghost movie, you know, where the ghost starts knocking shit over in the subway. You know, it's like the ghost is actually able to cross the threshold and like move shit around. And that's like the moment where you realize you could, and those are the moments that are the paradigm shifting. But the purpose of this story is just to express the world that we were abiding in as we were in Egypt. And so I wanted to tell that story first to give people an idea of we were not only in Egypt, but we were in a different entire paradigmatic place, like where different things were possible and magic was very real, and not just real in our mind, but real in ways that we could feel it.
In a three-dimensional physical sense in which we could experience its results and its effects. And the way you're putting it is perfect, because we were in Egypt, but we were also somewhere else. There was a layer of this other dimension laid upon where we were physically as well. And Matias brought us there every time.
Yeah.
And I think that, we were in Egypt for 2 weeks, but we were also in this other dimension, existing in this other dimension, gathering codes from this other dimension, gathering lessons from this other dimension, which have already helped me in my life, frankly. I'm still integrating.
Of course. Of course. Like it was such an unbelievably powerful journey. So we'll go back to the Temple of Isis. And the Temple of Isis, now that you've heard, this story from the second temple, the Temple of Isis in Philae, again, Matias is doing his magical things. And one of the things that he did, we're going into the Holy of Holies, and Matias looks down to his left and he sees this mother cat. And then he just, without even changing his gaze, he puts his palm down on the ground, and the kitten climbs into his other right palm, and he just swoops up this kitten.
But the kitten comes up from under the floorboards.
From under the floorboards.
He didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one knew the kitten was there.
No.
The kitten emerged.
The kitten appeared.
Yeah.
Kitten manifested.
Yeah.
And then comes in and rests in his palm. Matias knows exactly what to do, goes in, walks into the Holy of Holies.
Which is where there's an altar there. Those of you who don't know what the Holy of Holies, it's the center focus of any temple that has an altar.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's holding this kitten. And I have to say, like, I was like, is this going to get dark? Like,
He's about to squeeze the shit, the
Matias going to
lights off
bite
his
this
mouth?
kitten's
Yeah,
head
yeah.
off?
Yeah.
Like,
Ozzy Osbourne in this bitch, like, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he was channeling Isis, so of
Yeah.
course not. It's the divine mother. And
Right.
so the kitten was just purring and meowing, and he's holding up the kitten in the temple, and Philana's singing and Matias is toning, and you just feel the energy, the abundance, and the fertility, and the sense of Isis. Now, Isis is a part of so many MAGICK magical rituals that we do in the West, like Isis decks, there's Isis. But in Isis's temple, it feel like I got to feel her for the first time. It was like, oh, wow. And it's like a signature of Aphrodite and a signature of the Great Mother and Venus
Yeah.
and Gaia and all of these things. But it's its
Sophia.
own, it's its own particular signature.
She has her way.
She has her way, and she would just reveal different downloads and different things that we're still integrating,
Right.
like the Isis messages, and some of it just shakes you like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like massive, massive, massive. And that to me was when I was like, oh, wow, there's something different that's going to happen. Now, I will say that my home medicine, the medicine that really opens me up to the extrasensory perception, is the combination of ketamine and cannabis, right? And I've shared this many times. And this was with me in many of these different journeys, not in particularly high doses.
No,
but it was,
you don't need it.
You don't need it, but it was with me. So it opened me up, as that's what allowed me to feel it. But as I was open, the texture and the gravity of the energy that you would feel in each place was astounding.
My medicine of choice, for the most part, was psilocybin, a little bit of cannabis, Ka Anubis, if you will. And it's almost like, I'm not gonna come out here and say I understood the hieroglyphs, but they spoke to me in a different way than I could imagine. Like where I was led to different hieroglyphs sometimes to put my hand on them and understood that there was a technology of touching them, almost like Braille, right? And they weren't just for, deciphering and looking at, but there was an experiential relationship, I think, that the ancient Egyptians and the Kemet people had with touching the hieroglyphs. And that was very present for me. And I think psilocybin helped bring that out. And also just, you could just feel the amount of love and devotion and purpose that people had put into those walls.
Yeah.
Not just in the structure, not just in the building process, but the centuries, the millennia of coming there to worship.
Yep.
And building a relationship with the spirit of that temple. That was so present.
That was what was really unique, is that there's not a lot of places where temples that old still exist with the same altars that were used in the magical rituals, the same walls. And if you live in an animistic universe, which most medicine people who, once you go in, you have an animistic viewpoint. This is what Don Howard would explain, is you recognize that all things are alive.
Everything's. And if you don't think that, just go to the atomic scale.
Exactly.
And then, yes, they are scientific.
Yeah. And then that's all we are. Everything is alive.
Yeah.
And so the walls are holding the memory of all of the worship that's been there. Everything that's been happening. It's there and it's accessible because the walls still stand.
And they've been there for however many thousands of years, and the atoms haven't changed.
Exactly.
Maybe they've been exchanged in some way, but like they haven't changed.
Yeah.
The memory is still there. And they're holding those intentions and those. I don't know what the word is. They're holding the ka of the people who have been there over millennia.
Yeah,
and you can just feel it.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. So now let's move along the initiatic path to the Temple of Horus.
Oh my God.
The Temple of Horus. Now we get up real early. We do some yoga at dawn.
We got up at 4, right?
4 o'clock. 4
No,
o'clock.
we left at 4.
Left at 4.
Yeah,
4
so we got
o'clock.
up at 3 something.
And that's right after the Komombro. And we're going straight into the Temple
Like
of
4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe less. And we do yoga in the morning. I'm like, really? Do we need to do yoga? We could maybe sleep, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So we get in there exhausted and we start going into the Temple of Horus. And the Temple of Horus, some very special shit started happening for you in the Temple of Horus. And for me, it was the Temple of Dendra. And I'll tell that temple story where my big activation happened. Was a different temple on the path. But this is time for you to tell your story in the Temple of Horus. because that's where shit got real weird and in the most beautiful way. WYRD in that magical weird.
WYRD. WHYRD. Wired. Why did this happen? Let me start this story off by rewinding 8 or 9 years ago. I'm at an ayahuasca ceremony that I set up in Ojai. It's about 20 people there. And it was a 3-day ceremony, or 3-day ceremonial process. And on the 3rd day, I have these visions about being in ancient Egypt. And they're fairly monotonous visions. It was me and another guy. We're teenagers, and we're laughing and making fun of who I think is our father, who's giving a speech. These big pillars everywhere. And it felt older than Egypt. It felt
so you're in a vision space with a guy in the actual 3D in your 30s, 40s, no, 30s.
30s.
And
you think I'm 50, bro?
Yeah. I was like, you're 40 now. So you're but in the vision, you were teenagers.
So in the vision space, I'm a teenager. I'm maybe 17, 18, 19, maybe. And he's 15 years old, about that. Now, mind you, the other guy who's with me in the vision is also in the ceremony.
Right, yeah.
He's an acquaintance of mine. And it's a monotonous sort of vision. We're like laughing at some father figure. Maybe he's our father. I don't know. Maybe we're brothers. I don't recall. And in this vision space, we're making fun of his speech. There's these big pillars, and it felt a little older than ancient Egypt. Maybe it was Kem. And I remember that we had gone boating that day or canoeing or something, and like I hit him with a paddle or something like that. And he was really upset about that. And like, and it was like one of these memories where you're like, oh, well, I treated somebody wrong. Like it wasn't like this grand sort of like, oh my
it's like
God.
big brother, little brother shit.
Yeah, it was just like a normal.
Oh, you got a mosquito on you. Whack! I'm gonna hit you with a paddle.
It was more like if you can't out paddle me, you get hit. That kind of thing, right? And it was like this really monotonous sort of like very mundane memory of ancient Egypt. It's like, it wasn't like this big sort of revelation. It was just like, okay, that's interesting that I'm having this. And I remember I felt bad. So I had this, in the vision space, I had this water that was this condensed ball of water from Atlantis. And it was like an heirloom. So I gave it to him to make him feel better. And he appreciated it. So after the ceremony's over, it's the next morning, and he comes and lays down next to my mat, and he goes, "We were in ancient Egypt together, huh?" I go, "Yeah." "Yeah, wow." I was like, "You know that?" He's like, "Yeah, it was very clear." So we start talking about both of our visions, and they're directly aligned. There's no space in between them.
Wow.
We're both at these pillars. We're both laughing at the father figure. I gave him the ball of water. I had whacked him with a paddle. He had more insight on that part of the story because he remembered it and he was mad at me. He was mad at me now for thousands of years later for hitting him with a paddle or some shit. I don't know. And then he's looking at me and he goes, I came across that condensed water you gave me in this life. It's a crystal. I was like, get out of here. And he goes back to his mat and he comes over and he hands me this crystal ball about this big.
Little smaller than a golf ball.
Yeah, maybe a tiny ping pong.
Ping pong ball.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And I was astounded because I remember it looked just like that. And I was like, what the fuck? This is crazy. He's like, I always knew this was someone else's. I just didn't know who. And he gave it to me. And, fast forward many years later, couple moves, different countries, bunch of movies. You're packing stuff up, unpacking. I lost it. It was gone. Had no idea where it was. But I knew that one day if I was going to go to Egypt that I should bring it because that's where it came from. So fast forward to the last day, the day we're leaving for Egypt. It pops into my consciousness. It's like, fuck, I really wish I could find that thing. It's just like, it's not here. I open up my medicine cabinet in my bathroom, and in front of my toothbrush is this little Indian bag that I've never seen before. And I'm like, it's just in front of my toothbrush. What is it? I open it up. There's the ball. I tell Frida, she's like, I've seen that bag just kind of popping up here and there. I didn't know what it was. I was like, you have this? Like, yeah. I was like, I haven't seen this in years. So I'm like, okay, this ball wants to go home. Great. Mm-hmm. I've seen other crazy shit. This is not like, this is part of my worldview at this point. I can weave this into my worldview. Fine, cool. Take the ball with me. I bring it to the Temple of Isis. It's like, it doesn't resonate there. It's like, okay, so I keep it on me. Come Ombo. Doesn't resonate there. Okay, cool. We're doing yoga. And the ball falls out of the bag, right? Like out of my medicine bag, out of this bag. It's in there. And the ball in the Indian bag comes out. And it's like just sitting there. I'm like, okay. It's letting me know something. I grabbed the ball. During the yoga, I had, and I have an on-again, off-again relationship with yoga. It's like an ex-girlfriend I can't quit. Like, she's great at so many things, but she's so annoying. Like, she's always pushing my limits. I don't like it. It makes me get up early and do stuff with my body I don't feel like doing. And so I'm judging the yoga a little bit because it's a lot for 4 a.m. And there's a part of me like halfway through the yoga where I just felt this other activation happening, and it wasn't the yoga. It was the temple. And I felt these mudras just started happening, right? And I was just like, okay, just go with it, whatever, it's fine. We open up, we close the ceremony, we roll up the mats, we start going into the temple, and then they start gathering our groups. Now, by this time, I was well aware that I didn't want to be part of the Egyptologists, taking the tour of the temples, because it's just going to be like, oh, and this is this, and and here's where they did this, and here's where they did this, and that's great, that's fine.
Right.
But I was on the Matias tour, right? Like we all just decided to be on the Matias tour. And so I'm talking to Frida and Shadia, the two loves in my life, and I'm saying, I'm going to go find Matias. You guys do what you want to do, but I feel called to find Matias. And so they're, Soraya and Shadia are taking some pictures. Frida's kind of lingering here and there. And then I get drawn to Horus's falcon, this big statue. And then Josh Barber hands me these bird seeds as an offering. And I put my hand on the falcon. It's about 15, 18 feet tall. And I remember I offer the bird seed like that. And I just went, the bird seed hits the statue And then it comes back to my chest as if it was thrown back at me. And then that was it. And something happened where I kind of got tunnel vision. And it was like I was almost blacking out, but trying to hold on.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, okay. And then I just was like leaning on the statue. And here I was just like, okay, I'm not really sure what's happening. I was just trying to process what just happened, and also this overwhelming feeling of my lack of sovereignty as Mehcad.
It from the outside, from my perspective, that was right there. It was you almost started to sweat a little bit, and it was like you were almost fainting, and it was this kind of like this overwhelming rush of energy, and you were trying to gather your bearings, like, does Mehcad need to come stand up in here and get a hold of this situation, or can you just completely let go into this new wave that was coming through you?
And I think that was happening, like, time is whatever, but I think that maybe this is like 30 minutes after that, because like what I went into, this is what I remember. I don't remember everything. I remember going into the temple. I remember finding 2 rooms that I knew I had been in before. Unmistakably. I saw this stairwell, and I walked up halfway across the stairwell, and I knew that this wall had been put here later because there's something on the other side of it. I knew that. And then I came back down, and then Frida's like, Matias is over here. Or someone said, Matias is over here. I don't remember who it was. And so I go into this room Matias is in, and once again, I get pushed to the left side of his his being, and I kneel, and I'm touching the wall. And as I'm touching the wall, the geometry starts coming in. Like, your listeners and your viewers will know what I'm talking about when I say that. It's that sacred geometry that happens during a psychedelic experience. It was like feeling it was like being in a mushroom ceremony.
Yeah, frankly. Or a DMT ceremony.
Not quite. It was because DMT, sometimes everything goes away.
Yeah.
This was
working with what you were actually
this was
seeing.
Very interactive and very sort of present in a way that it felt, because DMT is like this rocket ship where sometimes it's not comforting. This was very comforting. This was very like, accept this, accept what's happening to you. And Matias had told me about how he feels when he's channeling, and he says that he feels like he's falling, and that he's just falling into this abyss, and he can feel the physical space of his body consciousness falling, but he's never hitting the ground. I didn't experience that. What I experienced was almost like a void that was put in front of me, in between the constant observer and who I considered to be Mehcad, right? And then at light speed, that void became infinite. And I was like, wait, where's that going? Where's that? What? I'm supposed to be over there. I'm supposed to be way over there. Wait, I'm not in the forefront. What's happening? And then I realized I was kind of in the middle. Like, I wasn't in the back. I was like in the middle of this expansive void. And I was thinking to myself, okay, this is overwhelming. And I think that's when you started to see the sweating and like the whole, wait, hold on, what's happening here?
Right.
And then Matias puts his hand out and he goes, Horus. And that thing that drugged me to the wall, it was just like, and I was like, how am I answering to that? Who do I think I am, right? And then I grab his hand, and he grabs Frida's hand, and he says, Freya. And she comes over, and it's like I slid. Like, I don't remember how I did it, but it was just like I was like on roller skates. Like, I'm holding Matias's hand. He's talking about a prophecy from the gods of the south and the goddess of the north, and he gets into some deep prophetic wisdom, and it struck me as very true on some levels and very scary on other levels. And my human mind was fighting for control of what was being said or what was being received. I don't like people telling me what to do. It's got to be my idea because I got good ideas. And unless it's the best idea wins. It's fine. He walks away. And then I remember being there with Frida and embracing her and feeling like I needed to get out of that room. I felt like I needed physical help. So I walk out and I come back into the foyer, I don't know, a bigger area of the temple where the pillars are. And then I started seeing the pillars. And I'm like, these pillars are familiar. I think this is where I was laughing in that vision. And I remember standing there and I just remember trying to talk to Matias. And then Vailana comes over and starts holding me and telling me something and I don't understand what she's saying. And then all of a sudden, everything goes and this is all black. And all I see is Vailana's face. And I think I fainted. Right? Like
that was the moment I was talking about. Yeah.
I definitely lost control of my physical sovereignty. Like I didn't have control. I wasn't strong enough to stand. And it wasn't fatigue. I was on no medicines. I was simply unable to control my body at that time. And I remember later Justin said, yeah, I had to grab your head because it almost hit the wall. I was like, was it like that? He's like, it was like that, bro.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And then I remember I was on the ground and I was speaking in a different language.
And it was, the language that was coming through was so potent and so regal and so like ancient and also like phonetically virtually impossible. Some of the things that you were saying, the way that the vibrato of your voice was moving.
I
it's like, no idea. I don't think the human voice can really do that intentionally in normal consciousness. It was like, what the fuck?
Later, Zach Bell asked me to do it again. And I couldn't. I was like, well, he's like, I was like, what does it sound like? He's like, well, it was like you were doing this nasal thing, but the vibrato was like super fast and loud. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I saw a video and I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. There's no way I can do that.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was holding, I thought it was you, but it was Justin. And I was saying something that was meant for, my human mind thought it was for you, but spiritually, I guess it was for him.
Yeah.
And then I thought I was holding Vailana, saying something to her. Spiritually, it wasn't for her, it was for Frida. And then I knew exactly what I was saying in this other language, and it totally made sense for both of them, right? And then I remember my arm shot up and I just stood up with almost like this force pushed me up.
Yeah, and then you went to full power. So that fainted Mehcad went
crazy.
All of a sudden into a full embodied, clear power where it was like,
yeah,
you were good.
Whatever that was. Yeah, so it was, I had no control over my body, but my body was in full power.
Yeah.
And I went to the walls and I started kissing the feet of these different gods and goddesses. And I knew who they were. And I was apologizing to some of them and I was angry at some of them. And I was like, why am I angry? Like, why am I apologizing? What did I do? What? And it was just like this thing was happening and I was wiping things off and touching the hieroglyphs again. And then I went into the other rooms and was chanting and toning and singing to the walls once again. And I went up halfway where that stairwell was. And I remember my body twisted doing something. And this is how we used to open this part, but it was closed now. And I was upset about that. And I remember somebody said to me, he was like, oh, this is beautiful. And I was like, who are you? I was like, what are you talking about? And I just kept moving. I kept going to different rooms. And then we get to this one room. And I remember searching for the crystal. Sorry, I'm just like, my body got put into that space again. It's just, I remember searching for the crystal, and I remember whatever this channeling experience was, their mind was like digging in my bag and goes, "You stupid humans in your fucking bags. Why? Like, what are you? What are all these fucking bags you guys have?" And I was like, offended. Like, there was a part of me that's like, what do you mean? And I think I'm getting emotional because it's like, it was as if I was experiencing its own frustration as my own. And I was like, it felt like a psychotic break in a way, because it was like, well, this is not my frustration. I love this bag.
Yeah.
I need this bag. But I really did feel it used my own receptors to be frustrated about human beings using bags or something. Right? And I was like, this is so, it feels so minute in the grand scheme of things, but it was like, experientially for me, it was where I accepted that something else was in me.
Yeah. And it was like, listen, I'm used to wizards' cloaks that have pouches where I know where everything is.
Right.
We don't have bags. We wear all of our sacred objects.
Yeah, transmuting, quantum energy into what I need, right? From the ether, fine. But this bag, what is this shit? So I remember I couldn't get anything. So I think I just dumped the bag out, or it just dumped the bag out. And I got the crystal, and we're in this room where all these little holes are in the wall that are perfectly sized for this crystal.
Yep.
And I start putting it in the holes and like rubbing it and praying. And I called you over and you were doing the same. And I think you remember, like, this is how this went, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people would put these balls in these holes and you would pray. And then this transmission about water came through me. And the part that I remember was about the fact that we're borrowing the water in our body from the sky. And we're borrowing the water in our body from the earth. And that it belongs to the sky and it belongs to the earth. And because we are able to hold that water, we are the sentient receptors between the earth and the heavens. And that it's all sacred. All the water is sacred. And so we're sacred beings because of the water.
Hmm.
And I remember that part distinctly. We moved on to different rooms. Every room we went into from that point on had a hole where that ball fit in. And I came out of another room that Matias told me to go into, and I dropped the ball, and then it's like I couldn't hold on to it. It's like vibrating and moving. So I would drop it, and it rolled over to this other guy, Carl. And I was like, part of my human mind, my ego was like, why didn't it go to one of my friends? I was like, oh, guys, Carl's a new friend. And I was like, and he starts to walk over. I was like, no, grab that. He grabs it. Now, I didn't see a hole in the wall prior to this. And I go, where's you going to put that? I look over, there it is. He goes and does it. And I have my hand on his back and he's channeling, I'm chanting. It's a whole thing. And he leaves the ball there. I take it back out. Matias calls us over. We go to the back of the temple, this huge hieroglyphic wall. Matias walks us over to this hieroglyph that's about the primordial waters raining down on the machine of consciousness to make it work. Like, I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but I do remember that's the hieroglyph he pointed us to. And there's a hole in the wall, very big hole, big enough to get a small hand in. And he put the ball there, or he showed me that's where the ball went, and I put it there, and I did some more prayers. Called you over, you did the same. And then as we're dispersing, Matias started walking away. And I remember feeling whoever he was channeling was frustrated with me because Mehcad was trying to get the driver's seat back. Like he was trying so hard to remove that void and be like, I need control of what's happening right now. How long am I going to give you my fucking body? How long am I going to give you my sovereignty? Right? I feel crazy. I feel ridiculous. I'm embarrassed. This is what's happening. I didn't come here for this shit. Like all this is happening, right? Rather than being in the experience of it fully, at that moment, I was trying to pull myself out, and I regret that. So I grab the ball again. So I think it's part of my own consciousness and my own ego, and I go into the Holy of Holies, and then I see my best friend sitting on the throne where you belong. Violana is singing to you, and I'm sitting right across on this. They have this like, I don't know what it's called, but like there's a chariot that the humans hold, right?
Yeah, like a human litter of some sort.
Yeah, it's the Rolls Royce of their day, for sure. And I'm sitting on the edge of that, and I'm watching this whole thing happen, holding space, and I have the ball in my hands, the crystal in my hands, and it's looking at me, right? Going, put me back. I want to go home. And I'm like, oh, fuck. This is where you belong. So I get up and I go back to the wall and I put it into this semicircle within the hieroglyphs that are about the primordial waters coming down to make the machine of consciousness work. And I stick it as far in that hole as I possibly can. I blow it, all this dust comes out. I'm like, am I Indiana Jones over here? And I remember feeling this sort of completion of this ayahuasca vision of being in ancient Egypt, handing that ball over to somebody else. Thousands of years later, getting that ball back in Ojai, and then bringing it back to the Temple of Edfu, where I know I handed it over the first time. And just the idea that we're sitting here today in Montana, knowing that a piece of my life and a piece of my devotion and intention is now in the wall at the Temple of Edfu, where it belongs. I'm not saying that this is the water it needed to make the machine of consciousness work, but somehow I was meant to bring that back there, right? And only a child's hand or a woman's hand perhaps can get in there and get that ball, because I made sure it went back into the edifice for sure. And there's something really special about leaving a piece of your devotion there, you know? And so if any of your viewers go to Edfu, go to the back wall, look for the hieroglyph in the center of the back wall that has these primordial waters bordering the hieroglyphs. And you'll see a, semicircle, kind of a half moon hole in the wall. If you look in there, you'll see condensed water from Atlantis. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
So there's
and
that.
This is why we said Egypt fucks.
Egypt fucks. So, listen, like I know how ridiculous this will sound to the uninitiated. I get it. I know how people are. This motherfucker's crazy.
Yeah,
Mehcad Brooks is crazy. I felt very self-conscious after. I went and hid in my cabin half the day after. Like I needed to drink a lot of water and I needed to rest. I needed to process everything that happened. But I also felt like, did I have a psychotic break? What the fuck just happened to me for 6 hours or 4 hours in that temple has never happened to me in my life. Like I've had moments in ayahuasca ceremonies and psilocybin ceremonies where and maybe at the peak of a DMT ceremony, where you're channeling something or a spirit comes in. Got it, understood. But it's about to happen, or it could happen,
right?
Because of the decisions that you've made to get yourself in a position to open in that way. To show up and just do yoga and walk into a temple and then have your body overtaken by the amalgamation of so much ka and devotion and intention for thousands of years that comes in, that coalesces into a being, perhaps, and then it comes into you. It's a different level, and it's not lost on me how this sounds. It's not lost on me that I spent a day and a half thinking I had a psychotic break, maybe. And should I worry about that? Should I be concerned? And then as the week progressed, the answer was no. It was like, no, bro, you're fine. You didn't have a psychotic break. You still, you know who you are. You know what you love. You know what's important. There's no collision of ideas coming from. There's no neurodivergence happening that hasn't happened before. So no, you're fine. This really fucking happened to you, or you participated in this process, and I'm still integrating that experience, and it's still very tender for me.
Yeah,
frankly. Like,
of course.
Like I was mad at Matias.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, what'd you do? He's like, I didn't do anything.
and this is like another overwhelming theme for me. It was like, oh, I wasn't ready. I thought Egypt was going to be, we're going to be looking at some cool shit.
Yeah.
But then when the energy got that real, that fucking real, you know, and there's micro moments that I can share from the Temple of Horus and the Temple of things for me, but to just keep this moving along the initiatic path, because my big moments came at some of the later temples, but this feeling of the energy being palpable in a way that I've never felt before, because I've never experienced a place that held that kind of energy. Now, a Maloka holds a certain amount of energy, but it's maybe 20 years old maximum. Yeah. It's had some ceremonies. Right. My own ceremony room in my house in Austin, 10 years of journeys that have been in there. And so there's some resonance and you can feel it and it feels like good energy, but this is a whole different ballgame.
Thousands of years.
Yeah.
Thousands of years of devotion and ka.
Yeah.
Thousands.
So we went. So the next one was, we're going to go to the next one. I'm going to take a little break after that and hydrate a little myself before I tell my story that's real vulnerable. But we're going to get through Karnak first. And so Karnak was interesting because there's a lot. This is the Temple of Sekhmet. And there was like kind of a lot of like expectation built up. But also Matias was like, the guards at Sekhmet are like really fastidious
they're
really overbearing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're all over. So they really like prevented us from actually accessing most of the sacredness of the Temple of Karnak, which is a gorgeous. I mean,
it's like a city.
Gorgeous.
It's a city.
It's a city.
It's beautiful.
But he did something really interesting, which was he called us all together and he said, your hearts are not aligned. And if you go into the Great Pyramid with your hearts not being aligned and with this dissonance in the field, then it's going to be very difficult for you. So he called us all together to the altar and he expressed that we needed to clear any of that. And so we just put our hands on the altar and, I started it off and was like, hey, I'm Aubrey. And here I am, and in my brokenness and in my holiness, and I express my brokenness and I express my holiness and the truth to the best that I could. And everybody went around and did the same thing. And it was a kind of a coming together of our little clan, our circle within the larger circle of the whole community. So it ended up being a beautiful experience, but I don't think for any of us, the Karnak temple really slapped, right? And I think it was because of the field that was created by the guards. Like the guards wouldn't really let us get into the magic of that 100%. Place.
No, I think they are. I think it's a concerted effort to withhold that from people.
Yeah,
there, for sure. Yeah, it feels that way.
Yeah, and of course, this has been the story of empire from the start. You find the holy and the sacred, and you tear it down or prevent access to it, whether that's a sacrament or medicine, you make it illegal, or whether it's a temple where you won't allow someone to sing. We experienced this in Greece. You can't sing, you can't chant, you can't tone, you can't meditate. Like if they catch you meditating, they're like,
Really?
yeah, like, hey, and so there's this energy of like, no, like none of this shit.
None of this old ancient way shit.
Yeah, you can just look at it. You can look at it and you can take some pictures for Instagram. You can commodify it. You can pay us our money so that you get to pay the toll booth.
But don't use the technology.
Because the technology is anti-empire. The technology is about self-empowerment. It's about the realization of ourselves as multidimensional beings, as our birthright, that we're able to tap into all of these energies. And it's actually democratized. It's not that a certain specific class of Brahmins get to only access this. No, this is available. And that democratization of spiritual power and sovereignty and autonomy is the antithesis of what empire wants, which is good little factory workers that are going to contribute to the commodification of all the world. Right. And so this is the energy that surrounds all of these sacred places. But we were blessed in that we had interlocutors and local Egyptians that were able to work within the system and give us pretty unprecedented access to most places.
Unbelievable what they were able to accomplish with that.
Yeah. Really, really, really special.
Karnak was a bit of a disappointment in that regard because I felt like there was so much to see there, but you were corralled into certain spaces at certain times, and it just felt, with the square footage, with the hectares that Karnak encompassed, it should have never felt crowded.
Yeah.
But it always felt crowded because we were being corralled into certain places at certain times, and it's just like, it was a lot. And like I look forward to going back there under different circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. I had an interesting moment in Karnak, which I shared actually in my speech
really funny.
Yesterday, where there was a guy who was in the group, and he comes up to me, and I'm just kind of doing my thing, and we're doing our thing with Matias, and I shared a talk and just kind of being myself. Ilana's singing to the pillars, and he comes up and he's like, "I'm super triggered by you." I'm like, "Whoa, like, I don't know." And he starts going in, and he's like, "I just think you need to be careful of your ego and how you're wielding this power." And I'm like, just listen and listen. He's like, "I'm really charged right now." I'm just listening and listening. And I say, "Yeah, I received, man." And I go, "My name's Aubrey." And I just go, and he goes, "Oh." And then he introduced himself. And I gave him a hug. But it was an interesting place where like lots of things were being magnified.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a moment where it was like all the projections of what you think about somebody. Then I just had in that moment just the wisdom to collapse it by saying like, whatever you might think, like, hey man, like my name's Aubrey, and I'm just figuring shit out here.
Yeah, just like you, bro.
Yeah, just like you, man.
And a lot different than you.
And so that was an interesting moment that happened there. But it was just one of those things where it feels like, if we can go back and actually kind of clear some space somehow,
I think
there's more potential there.
I think we can.
Yeah.
I think that feels like a place where some real magic was happening. Why? And it's likely the reason that they're so guarded.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like you can almost tell the sacredness by how much clustered armor is protected around it and how much restriction is like, you can tell where the magic is by the taboos.
They're giving it away. Like, you're not doing a good job of hiding this.
Yeah. Like
nothing, no chanting. You're like, why?
Yeah, there's a secret here.
So we talking about your shit now?
Oh man! All right. So now
your turn.
Yeah. So now I got to tell the story of Dendera, and the story of Dendera is the story of the Temple of Hathor, and the story of the Temple of Hathor. Now I don't have like a particularly strong connection with Hathor, but Ilana does, right? Like her sound healing is traced, the way that she learned is traced back to Hathor's
lineage.
Yeah, to the Hathor lineage. So it was a very special place for her, but I went in with very low expectations of what this was going to be. It was another temple on the initiatic path. I was feeling the energies. The energies were coming in. I was having my experiences. So we go in, and again, I'm on my same kind of light dose, little cannabis pen, little bit of, prescribed ketamine and a dissolvable troche. And I'm just kind of cruising through. And at the start, we had some really incredible Egyptian priestesses who would do like opening invocations before the archaeologists would go and try and do their thing. And we would split off with Matias.
Right.
In this particular one, they handed us a feather.
Right.
And they handed us a white feather.
Right.
And the intention of the white feather was to take the white feather and to express something that was on your heart to somebody else, to actually create more lightness in your heart. Well, I was in a position where I felt like I didn't really have anything I needed to share with anybody. So I just started to use the feather. I was like, I'm just going to use this feather to cleanse my heart, to make my heart as light as a feather. Right. And there's old stories about weighing your heart and weighing that the heart be as light as a feather. So I was
to get into the afterlife.
To get into the afterlife, your heart needs to be as light as a feather.
Right.
So I'm just cleaning and just kind of working with this feather on my own heart. And we start cruising through. And Matias then brings us into this very interesting hallway. It was like a kind of very narrow place, hieroglyphs on all the walls.
Yeah.
And Vailana comes in there with her sound bowl, her Tibetan sound bowl. And she's on fire this whole trip, right? Like she's like singing the most unbelievably beautiful sounds and doing her thing. And Matias is in there and they're toning and singing. And I start to get this energy starts to move through me where I can feel and see something that I've never felt before. And it's this awakening of my heart. And what I saw in my heart, I saw my heart like an orb. And my heart was this orb, and it was the center of my centers. That's a phrase that you use, like the center of my centers, my Atman, which is my monad, which is my divine source point. And I saw it as an orb. And then what I could see was all of the personality structures that I have and all of actually the neuroses that I have.
Yeah.
All of the little ways that I act in a way that's like reaching. And I saw it like almost like static electricity on like a Tesla coil. Imagine like a Tesla coil shooting out little lightning bolts. And it was searching, all of these different things were searching to connect to another point of love. Right? It was like love coming from the source point, the monad, that initial sphere of who we really are, love at its core, light as a feather, and feeling my heart in this like quartzite, like light orb. And then all of my personality affects, the places where I get sad, the places where I get angry, the places where I get scared, the places where I get a little obsessive or neurotic, all of these things just reaching out and creating the totality of my humanness. Which is all of the grandeur and all of the kind of frailty of the thing, and just reaching out from this orb. And then there's this other orb that I saw that was around it. So it was like a core inside another giant orb. And that other giant orb I recognized through this like extra dimensional intelligence. Oh, that's the all that is. That's if that little orb inside my heart was Atman, that was Brahman. That was, and Atman is Brahman, right? There's a correlation between these. They're different, but also the same, because the outer orb was also lined with love. And that's from the Hebrew mystic tradition as well that Mark Gaffney has shared, is that the insides are lined with love. So I found my source point was a source point of love. And then I had all this static electricity. And then I saw the outer Brahman, the all that is, which were the insides were lined with love. And I could see that that was not only in my heart, that was in everybody's heart.
Right.
That every single person had the Atman, had the source point, had the point of love, the orb of love in their own heart. And every single thing they're doing, every petty jealousy, every laugh, everything was just reaching to try and connect to the all that is, the outer Brahman. And it gave me this, for the first time in my life, the feeling of unconditional love. Because when I recognized that all of us were the Atman, the monad, the source, and all we were doing, no matter what it was, no matter even if it was vile, what we were doing, there was some way in which that static electricity was reaching from that, trying to make it to touch the outer wall of love so that love connected to love. But it would get lost in the distortion and in the prism and in the fogs. And sometimes it would find dead ends. And sometimes the darker forces, the upside down world, would pull the energy down into a place where actually it couldn't find its way out, back, love finding love. It would get stuck. But I could see that no matter what anybody was doing, it was all just their own source love reaching to find the greater universal love, and sometimes just finding itself getting in cul-de-sacs and dead ends and getting frazzled in certain spots. But I recognize that we're all on this same journey, myself and everybody, as like the center of our center, reaching through all of our personality affects to try and find the safety, the love of everything else. And it was the first time in my life where I could look, with my own vision and see the entirety of every human being and say like, Tatvamasi, like I am that too. Like you and me, you or me live in a different life. Your orb is the same as my orb. And we just have different patterns of static that are reaching. And then I made an interesting move. I said, all right, well, what if through my own observation and quantum realization, like the observer effect, what if I observe that all of my affects, all of these things that are reaching, that feel a little tender, that feel a little vulnerable, that wants a little love in this situation, that wants a word of affirmation, all of this, what if I just create an invisible thread of energy that connects all of these end points of my static electricity and connects them to the Brahman, connects them to the universal love. And through a visualization practice, I saw the entirety of myself, and then I visualized a thread that connected everything to the outer Brahman, to the outer orb of love. And that visualization then started to pulse and started to become real. And I started to feel like, oh my God, we use the word unconditional love, but like I'd never really felt unconditional love.
No.
I felt ecstatic love.
Sure.
You do a Bufo ceremony, right? It's like ecstatic love.
Sure.
Oh, love. Yeah. It's like, whoa, you're just blown. That's ecstatic love.
100%.
But there's not enough awareness for it to be unconditional.
And it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable either.
So it's ecstatic.
It's ecstatic.
Yeah.
So there's many different expressions of love. There's erotic love. There's all kinds of different, but unconditional love, this was the first time that I touched it and I felt it, because all I saw was love and the static electricity reaching and sometimes getting pulled into dark places, but knew that all it was reaching to find the outer love. And then in my own self, then I just connected all of those threads to the outer sphere. So that happened in that little hallway. And then there was another Holy of Holies where I was holding space as Matias and Vailana and the goddesses were doing this ritual. And I was just in meditation, like holding this space of unconditional love and protecting the energy so that they could do what they were doing there. And there was a few moments, but then we climbed down from this. That was kind of like you had to get on a ladder to get to that place. We move on down and we go into this particular part of the Temple of Hathor, which Matias is guiding. And Matias then grabs me and Vailana and puts us in the center of a circle of people. And there was 6 people.
Bigger room, right?
It's a bigger room. Yeah, it's a much bigger room.
Mm-hmm.
And so me and Vailana, sacred union, masculine and feminine, and we're there in the center. And then he grabs 3 men and 3 women. You were one of those men.
Yeah.
Frito is one of those women. And he starts to direct the people to start toning in a particular tone.
Right.
And then rotating in a particular way.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting goosebumps hearing this again. And I was there.
Right? So I'm already in this experience of visualizing and feeling this unconditionality of love and understanding it somatically. And then this Stargate technology, literally like that old show Stargate, where like things are like twisting and moving, but it was 3 people and 3 people, 3 men, 3 women, and then me and Vi in the center. And the most powerful activation of my whole fucking life happens then. And I didn't take any more medicine. I had a little bit of medicine.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
Yeah.
The most powerful activation
of
you, the psychonaut of our generation.
Yeah.
Our Timothy Leary. You're telling me that the most powerful activation that you've had in your life, because I know your life, was in that temple.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. You're in for a treat. Let's go.
Oh, man.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you chose those words correctly and then I heard that correctly. Okay.
And the interesting thing is a lot of times you try to correlate like the gravity of your experience with the quantity of the substance, right? If you do 1.3 of the buffo, then you're going to blast off
4 cups high.
4 cups high,
Or 7.
This was 2 hours after I'd done a little bit of medicine. So I'm not saying so I was open, but the most powerful psychonautic experience of my whole life happens in that technology. And I start shaking.
Yeah.
And this emergence from my heart just fully opens. That energy center, that chakra, what we call our heart, after I'd kind of understood and felt the nature of unconditional love, all of the pieces of my Atman, all of the energy, instead of me imagining an invisible thread of energy connecting all of those threads of my personality, they all just plugged right in. Atman plugged into Brahman, plugged right in and started pulsing back and forth, pulsing. And the people were spinning and the tones were happening, pulsing. And this is happening in my heart center. And then Atman is Brahman. It became one. It pulsed, faster. And then it just goes poof, and it hits where Atman became Brahman. And the love that I held inside was the same as the love of the entire cosmos. And I was one with the love of the universe as me in my own body. And in that, and it was only possible because of Vailana being right there in front of me, because she was there, she was singing, because of all of you rotating around, because Matias opening the portal. And Matias, whispering words from my lineage, like son of Judah, and like evoking this. And for me to feel my heart open to that level is something that even when I'm telling this story now, it seems like a dream. It seems like, did I dream that? Or was that really real?
I know the feeling.
Did that really happen? Because it's so hard to actually weave that into and integrate that into life, the place where my heart merged with the heart of the whole universe.
Yeah, and I mean, I was there, and I felt the resonance and the frequency coming off of you, and it just felt like pure love. And if you notice what Matias did was he had the three divine feminine energy and the three divine masculine energy holding hands, were spinning around you. Whenever somebody else came in, he goes, no, outside of the circle and go around them.
He was creating the 6-pointed star, the Merkaba.
Right.
He was creating this like geometrical technology.
And a cell.
Yeah.
The nucleus, the electrons, the protons.
Yep.
Right? And the orbit that they have. He was recreating that, which is incredible. And I think also what is present for me when you're telling this story is the difference between the eye of Horus and the eye of Ra. The eye of Horus is the center of the center.
Yep.
It is the light. It is the exploration of the light that doesn't have a visual spectrum that's inside of you, which comes from source and emanates outward.
That's the Ra.
Is it the Ra or the Horus?
Ra? The Ra is the sun.
Right, but so the Horus is the interior, third eye.
Third eye.
Right. So it's. I guess what I'm saying is the Atman feels like Horus, and the Brahma feels like Ra.
Yeah,
and in their language, and I had a similar experience as well with embodying what happened in Edfu, but I saw them as eyes.
Yep.
And me being in the center of that void was the eye of Horus. And that void, that expanse, was the eye of Ra.
Yeah.
Right? And it didn't feel, Matias explained void to us on the boat. It is everything, the entire singularity, all possibilities condensed into one point.
Yeah.
And that's what that expanse felt like, right? And I think it's important to make the distinction that we all have that inside of us.
Every single one of us
has
and
that
that's the most important message to share from this. Is not that there's special Mehcad and special Aubrey who only had access. There's technology available for us to recognize our own Atman and Brahman relationship, our own Eye of Ra, Eye of Horus relationship. All of these technologies are encoded in the ancient temples, in the ancient ways. And this was the technology of Atlantis. When we think of like the Atlantean civilization, pre-Diluvian, before the flood, we imagine that they were like fucking cruising around on spaceships and shit. And when you talk to Matias, who remembers his past lives, he's like, no, man, we were riding around on donkeys.
Yeah.
But our spiritual technology
was insane.
Was dialed.
Right. Like you guys have the internet, we connected with each other through that same field of frequency, but just with ourselves.
Right.
And listen, I mean, I'm not going to take away the fact that there is something special about you and me and the fact that we have done so much work in this realm that we get the fuck out of the way faster than a lot of people would. But it is available to everybody.
It's available.
As long as they have the presence to get the fuck out of their own way.
Yep.
Right?
It's within all of us.
Yeah, release that social conditioning of, is this weird? Is this wrong? Is this witchcraft? What is this? Right? Just don't try to understand what it is. It's the universe explaining itself to you through you.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna, your conscious mind is not gonna be able to wrap that up into a pretty bow.
No.
So
I have this moment, and this is, I read a lot of Paul Selig, and he talks about the awakening of the Christ and the difference of the awakening of the Christ versus Jesus. Now, when people come up and like, I'm Jesus, I'm like, watch the fuck out.
I'm like, you mean Jesus?
He's like, watch out.
Oh, are you from Mexico? Because it's a pretty common name there.
Like, watch out. Yeah, because that's a different thing. That's a declaration of being different and separate. And that's not what the teaching meant. The teaching was
never meant that.
To awaken the Christ within all of us. Yeah. The Christ that's available to every single person. It was really the democratization of love embodied and God embodied. That was the true teaching. And I got to have just a taste of what that was like in that temple. And it was fucking mind-blowing. And it's something that if I don't continue to tell the story, I would just kind of shuffle it away into like a corridor of my consciousness, because it's so big and so unbelievable that it's hard to weave into the story thread of my own life.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something kind of interesting about that, the term Christ consciousness and Messiah that throws people off, because Christ just means Messiah. But here's the thing. Who are you the Messiah for? Yourself. And that is something that we can all wrap our heads around. Is like, I can save myself. I can be the person that dies for my own sins. I can be the person that pulls myself up out of this abyss of being locked in a prison of my own space-time, of like something that I've created myself, right? So I can be my own savior in pulling myself out of that. And I think people have to start seeing it that way, that you can be your own personal fucking Messiah.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean you need to start teaching me shit.
Personal
Messiah.
Jesus.
And break the word up. Messiah. Messiah. You know?
It was, and so after that experience, it was really actually perfect, because after the experience, I'm having this experience and people could kind of feel that something happened, but the experience was happening internally in myself. Yeah. And then we had to kind of move on to the temple.
Yeah.
And
they were like, the police is taking pictures.
Yeah. And there was, we're like moving on.
We're just humming.
Yeah. And it was very interesting because it was like, I could see the smallest part of my ego go like, there should be a fucking band playing when this happens, like there should be a celebration. And all it was like, hey man, can I have some water? Or like, oh, I need a couple fucking Egyptian dollars to go buy a, Kit Kat or whatever it was. And it was like, oh yeah, right back to regular life.
Yeah,
right back to regular life. And it was just this beautiful thing of like, yeah, you can have this big moment, and then nobody needs to make a fanfare about it. Nobody needs to do anything. This is something that I got to experience. And then I got to share some water, and I got to share some chocolate. Yeah. And I just kind of move right on through with life.
And I think that's likely the best way to integrate it, because it is this big, overwhelming moment in many ways. When you feel something like that, you can't unfeel it.
Yeah.
And so what's the best thing to do after that? Just kind of get back into your structure to understand that that wasn't a psychotic break.
Yeah.
To understand that this really did happen, because here I am back in reality. Okay, nothing's really changed. I can return the text that I meant to 4 hours ago.
Right.
So I'm back. So that really did happen. Because now it's being juxtaposed, that feeling, that energy, that experience is being juxtaposed with the monotony of my normal life of wanting some water and a Kit Kat.
Yeah.
If a band played after, get yourself checked out.
Be weird.
You guys hear the trumpets? No, we don't.
Yeah. And that was it was just this kind of like beautiful moment of having such a big experience, but then just knowing that, and it made it like, this is a part of the story of the new humanity and the new world that's coming online, where it's not just one person that does this. It's all of us start to activate our monad. All of us start to activate our Christed self. All of us start to activate our Atman. Whatever the name is, it doesn't matter. It's the full opening of the heart.
And Matias puts it in a really beautiful way. And I felt this as some of these experiences were happening to you and me and Frida, Shadia, everybody, Vailana had incredible experiences. It's the remembering, right? And to break that word up again, it's to put back together, to remember the parts of yourself that we lost in this avarice-driven, social context in which we experience our lives, right? So it's like putting back together our connection with the Atman, putting back our connection with the Eye of Horus, the Eye of Ra, the Brahma. That is something that feels so fucking familiar. Like it truly is remembering, right? And in every sense of the word.
And to remember, like the members. It's just it's a putting back together. It's a putting back together of who we are as spiritual beings, which has been broken and severed intentionally.
Yeah.
And this is also another thread that we got to recognize is like the spiritual continuity has been intentionally severed.
Correct.
Intentionally severed.
Intentionally severed so that they can Frankenstein other energetic aspects onto our beings, right? So like we have these sort of body conscious connections of electromagnetic energy that are really connected to our Atman or connected to our Rama. And they go, let's replace that with retail therapy. Let's replace that with you feeling out of control of your environment in some way, right? And so the severing was there, but it's what did they put in place of that? Because we're still searching. And it's like you said, it's the in between that Atman and that Brahma, there's love is trying to find love and it's getting lost. But it got detoured purposefully to hold up the empire. So it's just, when you finally see it, you go, what am I doing? What are we doing? We can do this better.
Yeah.
And it's just remembering. That's it.
Yeah. And this is what all of the witch hunts and all of the, empire as capital R religion, empire as corporatocracy that we're experiencing now. It's all the same force, but it's the denial of our own personal power and our own sovereignty. And because as sovereign, alive, awake, vibrant agents of the divine, we're not going to fall into these pyramid scheme patterns of power and control. We're all going to realize that we're all participating in this universality of consciousness. The one mind, as the Kabbalion would say, or the one cosmo-erotic universe, as Mark Gaffney would say, is like we're all participating in this thing. But empire will try to trick us and make us a little cog in a machine, an expendable cog, a trigger for some bullets, or a finger that pushes the button that drops a bomb that fuels and powers the war empire, that the war machine that goes, and all of this crazy shit that's been there. And then all the intermediaries that say, you can't talk to God, you talk to us, we'll talk to God for you. This whole priest class, and then all the tithing to build all of these. It's this whole power game, but really the whole power game crumbles when you recognize that everybody has the power to connect with their own divinity,
right,
with their own royalty, with their own beauty.
Their divine inheritance from the universe.
Exactly. It's their birthright.
Right. And we have this society that's commodified fear. And you can't sell people things who don't need them when they have so much already within them. And the change is coming. You can feel it. And I think Egypt is a big part of that. A culture that was built, according to Matias, as a culture that was there to uplift human beings into their divinity. I feel like that presence and that awareness and that intention is still in that land.
Yeah, there's obviously deep codes that go there. Yeah, and we're not to the end of this journey in Egypt either.
No.
Because there's some more spots. So let's go, let's go to the next stop. Next stop along this path on this magical bus ride, a boat ride, actually. The Osireion Temple. And the Osireion Temple was really interesting because the Osireion Temple had hieroglyphs of aliens.
Spaceships. Right there. I got a video. I'm like, that's a spaceship. That's a helicopter. Or at least it looks like a helicopter does today. So what else was that?
That's I mean, and also, mushrooms on all that. Unmistakably.
Unless there's like some really weird dicks. It's either really weird dicks, a lot. They were obsessed with really weird dicks or mushrooms, one of the two. I'm going to go with mushrooms.
I think I'm going to go with mushrooms.
It's safe to say.
I think it's pretty safe to say.
Some strange dicks, yeah.
So we're in the Osireion temple. We go all the way down to the ancient part of that temple. Now, a lot of these temples were rebuilt, around, in the Roman times. But the Osireion temple had old places with old waters and old caverns. And we went down, and it took a little while. The guards were holding the gate because they didn't want to let us down there. And probably some people had to get bribed and whatever
Who knows what happened?
Whatever had to happen. But at a certain point, the rope was lifted.
Yep. And it was really amazing. I don't want to skim over that. We stood outside in the blazing Egyptian desert heat for like 30 minutes, just holding our space, knowing that we would get in. And we did. Which in and of itself was, I thought was really beautiful and worth mentioning.
Yeah. Yeah. We knew that we had to go there.
Yeah.
We knew that there was something that was going to be activated when we went there. And we just trusted that with our intention that they would let us into this place, that it looked like they had no intention of letting us in.
To keep out, closed, it said the whole thing. And we just stood at the rope like we were at a VIP event in Miami back in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. So we go in there, we go down into the Holy of Holies. And interestingly, Matias calls for a particular one of the Egyptian priestesses whose name was Shekinah, which I thought was also wildly synchronistic because I've been in a deep study with Mark Gaffney involving Shekinah, the embodiment of Eros itself, like the Tao of Eros, the structure of the cosmoerotic universe. And Matias and Shekinah start channeling different things in that. And one of the things they said was, there's going to be a ship that's going to arrive. You remember that? They're like, there's going to be a ship, and the ship is coming from Anubis. Anubis has a ship. And I heard that. And again, same, light dose ketamine cannabis.
This is in the structure underneath.
In the structure underneath.
The Thoth built.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's like, all right, a ship. And then all of a sudden, fucking spaceship just comes straight into my vision space. Like, what the fuck? So Shekinah, the Egyptian priestess, says there's a ship. And then I was like, holy shit, there's a ship. You were right.
There it is.
There it is.
And there's that.
There's that. And then on the ship, you're going to receive a gift. Receive a gift.
Oh man. Go ahead.
What was the gift that you got? And then I'll tell the gift.
No, listen, you can't just,
all right, so
do detours like that.
So you're going to receive a gift. And then my left hand gets fiery hot, like the heat of the sun. And my right hand is ice cold, like steel, like cold steel. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? Because literally to the touch, I have enough awareness there, even though the energy is so strong. Like, I know that somatically, like if you put one of those little, infrared thermometers like they used to do for COVID checks, and you put one on my left hand. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that shit would be like 115. And you put one on my right hand and it'd be like 60, like whatever. Yeah, it'd be like fucking cold.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. And it was showing me, it was like, always with the left hand, love, just the love of the sun. It was the same activation from the Temple of Dendera, right? It's like just love, like unconditional love, giving and receiving, unconditional love. And then in the right hand, the steel, the cold steel, was discretion, discernment, how to cut, chisel, shape reality so that it actually serves us as beings that are made of molecules and atoms. And so it was the combination of both. So the gift that ship came and gave was In your left hand, you hold unconditional love, the love of the sun, the love of Ra, the love, this love. And in your right hand, you hold discretion, discernment, vision, the ability to actually shape reality. But that wasn't even the final activation of that. That was building up. And then some more toning happened, some more chanting happened. And then all of a sudden, my whole consciousness just becomes one eye, one giant eye. And what I could see as that eye is I could see that anything that I saw with my imagination, I could build into reality. So it was like the eye of the creator. Like I could see it into reality. I see it and believe it and manifest it into reality. And it wasn't like I was doing any particularly important mission.
Right.
You know, I was just like, holy shit.
This is available for you.
This is available. Like what we see, and then power, like first is the sight, you see it.
Right.
And then when you see it, you believe it.
Right.
And then with your belief, and then it manifests out of the quantum.
You can materialize it out of nothingness.
Out of nothingness.
Right.
And it was this experience. And it was the most discombobulated I've ever been.
Right.
And there was also a beautiful moment where Matias started talking about I am. And he moved from the I am, which is all life. I am consciousness. In its stillness, in its pregnant possibility state, awareness itself, I am. And it reminded me of what Paul Selig says in his classic, his classic intonation affirmation. I know who I am in truth. I am. Who I am is I am. And then Matias had us singing, I am. And boy. I recognized that in the singing of I am, we were making a declaration of our vibration. And that was, I know what I am in truth. And the what was our emanation that comes from the source point, comes from the field of I amness. And as you express it through the word, through the tone, through the vibration, you declare what you are. And then to follow with Paul Selig's guidance, which comes from who he calls the guides, after you know who you are, what you are, the vibration that you are, which includes all of those little static electricity pieces, all of those reaching towards the divine, what you are in any moment, the declaration of what you are, then what you are then informs how you serve. I know how I serve in truth. Because your act of service is an expression of who and what you are. And then everything else flows naturally from that experience.
Yeah.
And that moment in the bottom of the Temple of Osiris was like, if the experience at Dendro was like, that was the number one, this is now number two. And so here I am, a 24-year psychonaut, and the two biggest journeys of my life were on some of the least medicine, and they were back to back. In Egypt.
Maybe a day apart, two days apart, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, I don't know how much more of this I can take. So we scramble out of that place. But I want to hear a little bit about like what happened for you in the Osiris temple during that time.
Yeah, I mean that was powerful. Going down into what was obviously not Egyptian architecture that comes from much older, like these megalithic stones that are stacked very simply onto each other, and then seeing this what looks like almost like a laser cut flower of life there on one of the megaliths. That in and of itself is just almost an out-of-body experience to see the precision of that engraving, right? Just in that space. Matias is channeling with Shekinah, And he came up to me and said something that I'll keep for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But we were all called into this very long sort of corridor, right? That was underground, this little chamber, big chamber, very long. And we fit everybody in there. We fit about, I don't know, there had to be 120, 150 people in there,
Yeah.
all chanting and meditating. One, I've just never been in that physical experience in my life, having 150 people who are either friends or acquaintances sharing a tonal resonance and a heart space in an ancient temple. That in and of itself is just one of the most powerful things that I am so grateful for, and probably top 10 experiences in my life just in that experience. As Matias and Shekinah were channeling and saying there's a ship coming and it's Anubis' ship, and I'm very drawn to Anubis in many ways. I base my character on Law and Order off Anubis in some ways, where he's the protector of the dimensions, the guardian between the living and the dead. Obviously, that's what a homicide detective is in some ways. He's the last resource that the family has, as well as the clergy and the undertaker, unfortunately. Those are the three people that the family deals with last whenever someone is violently removed from this realm. And so my character is based on the etymology of his name, Jalen Shaw, Shalom, and Shaw is Welsh for wolf, so peace wolf. And in the Egyptian tradition, there are no wolves or jackals. And a holy jackal, Anubis. So I'm very drawn to Anubis.
Yeah.
So that resonated with me. And the ship was Anubis' ship, the boat that goes on to the river in between the dimensions. And on this ship was an ancestor I've called in a while back. I called him in August 30th, 2019, which was the 400-year anniversary of the first African foot to step foot onto, to place its foot onto soil in what would become America, in a place called Point Comfort, Virginia, on a pirate ship called the White Lion. 20 some odd Africans were traded for rum, food, and provisions. And I don't know if my ancestors were one of those 20, but I do know that I wanted to honor my ancestry by calling in an ancestor, the father of my entire clan that day. And he came, and he's here, and he's very helpful. And he showed me his pain, he showed me his story, he showed me so much throughout the past almost 4 years now that we're very close. So he was there. And they said, call in your ancestors and there's a key that they want to give you. And so I'm in the process, and I see my ancestor Ebo, and I'm like, oh, it's you. Oh, this is great. This is cool. I can do this. I've had a lot of fucking outlandish experiences in the quantum realm here in Egypt, and I'm happy to see a familiar face. And so I'm like, thank God, Ebo, come on, man, let's go. And Ebo's like, I'm like, what do you mean? And he kind of makes way, and he does this bow sort of movement, like to the ancestor behind him. And he's introduced me to other ancestors, and he's never done this. He's always been like, you know, he comes from a shamanic, almost royal lineage himself in the Yoruba people. And he doesn't bow to people. I mean, it's not his thing. But he bowed to this man. And this was Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was standing there as clear as day, bathed in this orange sort of sun energy arc field. And it was unmistakably him. And I told a little bit of the story at the summit, but like I have had experiences with Akhenaten before, and like I've gotten tattoos of him. my body. And I just never understood why I was drawn to him. And I'd had these ayahuasca visions in which I had first and second person memories of things he was doing and things he was going through, things that he thought were important. And this was the first time I'd ever encountered him as a being that was directly communicating with me. And, or maybe the first time I acknowledged it. I don't know if it's the first time, but it's the first time it was overwhelmingly undeniable that this was happening. And he's holding, and he pulls out of his cloak or something, I don't know where it came from, the key, which is this Merkaba, 3-dimensional Merkaba, that's hovering over his hand and glowing gold, sun orange gold to yellowish, and this brilliant blue bright light, right? And I felt like that meant consciousness, spirit, that blue-white energy coming from that. And I felt like the orange-yellow was like the power of beingness to do, to accomplish, to see it through. And he handed over this Merkaba, and I humbly accepted, and I kind of just kept that to myself. I told you, I told Frida, Shadi, and Vi. But I didn't tell anybody. And I just held this Merkaba in my being. And then 3 days later, we're at the Great Pyramids, and an Egyptologist walks up to me. And she notices this piece, right? So I had to get this piece in Egypt because it's Akhenaten on the front, and on the back is Horus, the hieroglyph of Horus. And when I saw that, I was like, this motherfucker. Okay. Yeah. I see the piece. This is, you know, this is it. So I'm wearing the piece, and she says, what's your connection to King Akhenaten? And I was a little guarded. Like she had been someone I hadn't really connected with in the trip, and I have my ideas about Egyptologists. I think they're kind of, and I'm overgeneralizing, obviously, but I think that they are held within the boundaries of what their academic structure is, and their research is likely limited. But then again, you probably have people who are in that world who know more, who just can't say it.
Yeah.
Right? And I found out that she was one of these people. And we're talking a little bit, you know, I'm giving her some information that I feel like is fairly general and protective of some of my own experiences that I've had. And she says, he came to you when they said calling your ancestors, yeah? And I go, yep. She goes, and he gave you a gold and blue Merkaba. Did he not? Whoa. And I go, holy fuck. And I just started tearing up, and I said, yes. I go, what do you see? Like, let's change the direction of this conversation. What do you see? And she said, may I touch you? I can tell certain things if I touch you. I said, sure. So she puts her hands on my chest and then puts her head on my chest, and she starts toning. And then I go into this sort of, I'm a little guarded. I'm like, I don't know who you are. You're touching me like this. Your head's on my chest and shit. Like, oh, I feel like we're cuddling standing up. It's kind of weird. Once I got over that, I saw Akhenaten's face clear as day, like right next to mine, in front of me. And I'm sitting here looking at him, and he's like, what's up? I'm like, you're kidding, right? And it's just this, the Merkaba's here again, and she moves around me, puts her hands, I guess, where my kidneys are, and then she puts her crown chakra on my back. I'd never felt anything like this. And like she starts humming and toning, and like my body starts vibrating, and like I can just feel this golden blue light emanating from around me, and didn't feel like mine, but it was also feel like it was being gifted. And she says, she comes back around and she goes, So were you him, or does he speak to you? And I go, I don't know how to answer that. She goes, we don't know a lot about his life. He was very mysterious. He was very secretive. He did some things that were, he brought the truth to light that people didn't want to acknowledge in his time. Do you feel like that's something that you're doing? I was like, yeah. I feel like it's part of my life's work, yeah. She goes, okay. We don't know where his tomb is. We don't know a lot about his life. We know what he changed, and that's how we were able to understand him in the best way. But if you would come to Tel Avarna, if you come back to Egypt, I would like to guide you to his sacred spots, and I think that you could tell us more about his life. And I was like, I'm an actor. I'm a musician. I'm a writer. I dress well. I got a lot of good qualities. If you think I'm a reincarnated king from ancient Egypt, I'm a slow. Let me just pump the brakes real quick, because that's going to be very hard for me to accept on top of everything else. But there's something in me that cannot deny the experience, the experience my body felt when she touched me, the experience I had when I was given the Merkaba and she knew it. And there's something that I can't deny about that. And I will go back and I will go to his sites and I will document it. And whatever happens, happens. And I'm ready to see that myself, and I'm ready for the world to see that myself, and
somehow it's a part of the tapestry of this new world, this time between stories, and it's part of the new story of the new world. It's the remembering. And, so to weave us, we're weaving now towards the conclusion, which is the pyramids. Jesus. So we're wrapping towards this. So Matias said one final thing when I was down in that structure in the Osireion temple, where I had that realization of becoming the eye that could see manifestation into reality through the act of seeing, believing, and manifesting into reality. Then he comes up to me and he goes, he always knows what I'm experiencing. It's magically. Yeah, exactly. He knows exactly. He's like, Jesus, man. Yeah. And he goes, if you want to be the creator or a creator, you have to understand what it feels like to be a creator as a woman. As a woman.
Those are the true creators here.
Right.
Those are the true
creators. It's like, you have to understand what it feels like as a woman to be a creator. And I'm like, well, there's a pregnant man emoji, but I don't think I can physically experience what that would feel like, right?
Who am I going to let impregnate me? That would be my had to be Prince. There's going to be a guy. You got to dig up Prince. Ooh, listen. If I'm going to get pregnant, it's going to be Prince
for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be Prince
for sure,
or no one.
Yeah. MJ.
He freaked me out. He's behind you like, oh God, no.
I have a good relationship with MJ.
He did make bad.
So that was a very interesting prophecy, because what manifested within a day after that was the most horrendously painful gastric ulcer that I've ever had in my life. And that became a thread that was guiding through the rest of the ceremony. First of all, it was like my water broke, except it was just diarrhea. I was like, I'm done. I could not.
That's it.
So that was the first part. It was just like incessant, like unstoppable.
Oh, I remember.
And then it was this gastric ulcer that was just growing in intensity, which is just this deep, gnawing, aching pain. So I'm dealing with this, and I didn't exactly put it together till later that this was part of what Matias was saying, was like the pain, to experience what it feels like as a woman. And of course, I'm not saying that my gastric ulcer pain is the same as the pains of contractions, but there's some very interesting synchronicities that started to happen as I went through my own pain ceremony. But I'll tell the conclusion of the pain ceremony, which happened on the plane back from Egypt. But leading up, I had enough strength to make it to, I think they call it the Red Pyramid, that first pyramid that we went to.
Yeah.
Which is just this beautiful experience. It has a body chamber, a heart chamber, and a mind chamber.
Yeah.
And Vailana's singing and making these incredible activations. It does smell like urine in all of the
You
temples.
guys keep saying that. I don't think it smells like urine per se. I think it's got a very distinct smell.
Yeah.
It smells like a Subway.
That people pissed in.
Yeah. Well, people piss in Subway.
Yeah, for sure.
Listen, I haven't been in Subway in a long time, but I do remember a very distinct smell.
Yeah.
And it's very similar.
It is.
It's not just urine.
No.
It's 22% urine.
Yeah.
For sure. There's a lot of urine.
It has subtle notes.
Oh, yeah. No,
subtle notes.
Yeah, listen, if you were going to read...
It's ammonia-like.
Yes. Like it would be a significant amount of the ingredients in there. Yeah.
And so Vailana starts singing, and she's doing this unbelievable activation, and I just start walking on this earth, but this earth as the kingdom. And it was there's all the talk about the kingdom of heaven, which is here, if you have but the eyes to see it.
Yeah.
And the old teaching, behold, I make all things new, is to see this new world. This is the new story, is to see the world as beautiful as it actually is. And so I'm in this heaven space where I can actually see the eros of every piece of fruit, every conversation, every smell, every dance, every touch, every breath of wind, every little touch of water, the feeling of the sunlight on my skin. It was full Eden. And I'm in this Edenic state, and Vailana's singing in this unbelievable song that's coming through, and she's pulling a sword out of my stomach and like doing crazy magical shit. But I'm just like cruising through heaven, despite this deep, deep pain that I'm holding, which resided, like calmed down for a moment while I was in that temple. But that was just the start of my kind of pain journey. And then I drug myself, and I want to hear more of your King's Chamber stories, but I'll tell my entry. So make it back, hard nights, no sleep, the pain of the ulcer just like waking me up at night. It's just I'm doubled over in pain. I'm trying to chant or tone. I'm waking Vi up for some kind of help, something to soothe me, taking all of the, proton pump inhibitor medication and all of the things to kind of calm down the acid in my stomach. Starts to get real intense. I get just enough energy to make it out to the Great Pyramid. I enter into the King's Chamber. And for me, in my experience in the King's Chamber, I came in real wounded. Like I came in with like an open wound in my psychic field, which was created by that ulcer in my body. It was like, it felt like I was really vulnerable. And the King's Chamber is a very interesting place because so many people have gone there since the origin of what it was used for, and had cathartic experiences where they're purging out their own demons and they're channeling their own whatever the fuck they're channeling in this King's Chamber, because it's been that access point that so many people have gone to. And I could feel that there was this it was powerful, incredibly powerful. And I had another beautiful experience in the sarcophagus where Vi was singing to me as I was lying in there, and some amazing moments in there, and the music that she was singing, holy shit, it was like the heavens opened up and there was other musicians, and it was this, it was magical, but there was this sense of this was not spiritually clean. There was a lot of energy, and I think if I was at full power, I would have had my force field of like my own spiritual fire that would have protected me, and it would have been like this, fuck yeah, King's Chamber. But actually like some deep, like festering darkness got in me spiritually. And I'll tell the story at the end after we finish wrapping up your story about the pyramids, about kind of the way in which actually you came and fucking helped me out big time from some of this spiritual kind of, it was almost like a spiritual infection that I got while I was in the King's Chamber because I went in with an open wound.
Right. And it's a place that can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a place that can do that. Jesus. Osiris. Good God. Once again, I'll preface this by saying, I wouldn't believe me either.
Yeah.
I wouldn't believe me either.
For sure.
But it's one of those moments again.
For all the people who've already turned off this podcast and have declared me and Mehcad kooks, like,
good for you.
I understand.
And if you haven't yet, turn it off now. That's fine. Because
feel free.
It's about to get weirder. And
but if you want to stick with this,
yeah, I'm doing a line of demarcation. So here are the buttons, and if people have turned it off, they'll never see these buttons. So we're with a group of like 180, 200 people. Wonderful human beings. Mark Hyman, Zach Bell, Radha, Mickey, Timothy, Eli, just an incredible group of people. Just an incredible group of people. And yet there's also something that happens when there's a lot of people in one place where, you kind of, it's harder to connect with the space in some ways. And we went into the King's Chamber in different groups. Luckily, Matias took us to the Red Pyramid first, day before or something like that. And, I'm claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't been to the pyramids, you're very surprised to understand that the stairwell is the size of a Mini Cooper.
It's a 4x4 chute. And I actually talked to Matias. Yeah. Matias was like, you're not supposed to actually climb it. They actually would put you in like a coffin sled, like a toboggan, and they would like lower you down
makes total sense.
And draw you up. Like
if you were laying down, it makes total sense.
Yeah. So you're supposed to be lying down like on a roller, like a coffin roller coaster.
That makes
and
more
you just
sense.
fucking go down and then you lay back in the coffin roller coaster and they tug you back up. And that was the only way in and out. That
makes
you actually
total
went.
sense.
But we're just fucking low crawling our way through this little chute.
And it's long.
Yeah. It's like
long. Trying
to stand up in a sphincter and walk your way out.
I've never tried it, but I'll take your word, you and Kyle's word for it.
It's a big ass.
Yeah, it's a big ass.
You got to stand up in that.
Shrek ass right there. Speaking of Shrek ass, so the Red Pyramid was obviously the mind, body, spirit. Or was it heart? Was it heart?
It was body, heart, spirit, body, emotion, spirit,
right.
Body, emotion, mind.
Body, emotion, mind. So mind and spirit, same thing.
Right.
Emotion, heart, same thing.
Right.
Body. Body. So I had incredible experiences in that pyramid. I don't want to take anything away from that. I actually recorded some of our chants. They're beautiful. Incredible experience. First time in a pyramid. We'll never forget it. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a whole different technology. It's unbelievable. Going into the King's Chamber and the groups that we did, you were there, Vi was there, Frida, a lot of other people I really respect were in that room and in that chamber. And there was this, I felt what you felt. I felt that there may have been some energy that was unlocked in that place because the amount of people who may not have been in the same heart resonance, right? Just a lot of people in the room. And there was something about that energy towards the end of our time there where I had to get out first. I had to go.
Yeah.
Like I was grounding and I was grounded and there was a lot going on for me and I just had to go. And I did, and I thought it was unbelievable. And there were certain things that happened in that chamber that were very clarifying for me. But what I do know, and that was overwhelming for me in some ways, was that I had been in that room before in a past life. And it felt, I don't want to say, it felt, being in that room at that point in time felt less intentional than what I had remembered. And it didn't align for me, so I left. And I had an experience with Matias and Justin outside, Venus above us, Isis above us, the pyramid there at night, and connecting with that pyramid in a kinetic way, and it was beautiful. And then the next day, we decided to go back to the pyramid after everybody left. So it was me, Frida, Shadia, Matias, and his friend. I forget his name. And it was just the five of us. And we go in, and I'm well rested, and we're alone. I'm at full physical and full spiritual power. Having had the Akhenaten experiences already, having had the experience at Edfu, having held space in your experiences and Frida's experiences and Vi's experiences, Shadia had, I don't think she'd mind me saying, she had kind of this past life regression moment at Karnak after you guys left that we had to sort of, help her breathe into and accept, right? And it was inexplicable for her. She's never experienced anything like that. So we've all had these experiences, right? And she was studying, so she missed going into the king's chamber. So we all went back the next day, and there we were. And when I close my eyes, I can still feel the room. I can see the room. I can see how awestruck I am by the technology that created such symmetry in that room.
Yeah.
And I'm OCD and I count everything, right? I count the blocks. It's 9 every way. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And these megalithic blocks, they're tons. They're thousands of tons.
Surrounded by fucking massive pyramids.
Surrounded by more thousands of tons.
Yeah.
And so when you really just put it into perspective where you are, that in and of itself is a marvel of engineering, ingenuity, and purpose. But being in the experience of that space with just the 5 of us and this guard who was there, at first he was trying to, conduct the experience, telling us what we couldn't do, what we could do. And then Matias was, and then I remember I took my shirt off because it's hot as balls in there. It's like
it's a sauna.
It is a sauna. Bikram yoga ain't got shit on this, right? So it's like, it's nothing. So I take my shirt off and we start meditating and doing the whole thing. And I have my hand on the sarcophagus. And I remember feeling self-conscious about what I wanted, what felt right for me to do, which was to get inside of it. And I was like, isn't this disrespectful? All these different things. And then it was this very clear voice of saying, no, this was no one's tomb. This was a sarcophagus for preparation. You're supposed to get in. I was like, oh, you're just supposed to get in with the right intention. And I think I saw some of that, just not lack of, but unawareness of the intention, of the purpose of the sarcophagus the night before. And I think that's what triggered me. And the guard was trying to tell me something about putting my shirt on. And I was like, no. I was like, acting like I didn't speak English. And he's like, what language do you speak? And I remember we're trying to get into the experience and the guard is kind of trying to take us out, which is so interesting. It's just so weird that it operates that way. Because they wanted to be this place of tourism and commodify the architecture and the archaeology and the experience. but it's almost like they don't want it to be used for what it was intended to be used for, which is so interesting to me because it doesn't make sense. So I'm there, and like my energy's kind of blocking that off, and I could feel Frida's energy protecting that space. Matias's energy was protecting that space. Shadia's energy was protecting that space. And she actually had a physical interaction with him that made him calm down, which was really beautiful. And he kind of left the room. And at the same time he left the room, I didn't know he left the room, but I got into the sarcophagus. And I laid there. And as soon as my back hit the bottom of it, I remember that there used to be water in there, like a little bit of water, like to help the sound vibration in some way. I was like, oh, where's that water? And then full Bufo experience.
Whoa.
The entire room went away. Sarcophagus went away. I still heard the chanting. I still heard the voices. Matias was speaking Chem, Atlantean, I don't know. And I'm having this full-on Bufo experience, which reminded me of when the Egyptologist touched me. And here's Akhenaten again, clear as day, just in my face, doing this. And I was like, okay. And then what came out of me was this chant, which is an ancient Egyptian concept called Ka, right? Which has the sound of creation in it, but the Egyptians translated it as like your chi, your life force, like the personalized version of your own signature of Eros, right? Like it's this beingness that energizes the soul to live, right? And through it, anything is possible. You can manifest your Ka somewhere else as well. And I just remember going into this deep meditation of Ka. And continuing that for what felt like an eternity. And all of my own self-consciousness, all of my own social conditioning, all of my own limited belief systems, everything that I thought about, is this psychotic? Is this, do I think I'm special? Whatever. All those ideas simply fell away.
Yeah.
As I'm connecting myself to my Ka. And it was like this energetic shower of warmth and confidence and knowingness that, no, you're not special. No, this isn't crazy. No, that's a laundry machine. No, you're not imagining this. There is something that's happening that you need to accept.
Yeah.
Beyond your conscious mind, beyond your own self-judgment, beyond what you may believe to be acceptable with your limited access to this magic. That all fell away. It was no match for the experience that was happening, that was actually happening to me. And I remember Matias sort of breaking the spell of the Bufo experience, basically. And he said it in a different language, but it was very, very clear. It almost felt like English, because I knew exactly what he was saying. And he said, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it. He said something along the lines of, welcome home, all hail Akhenaten, rise. And the energy in my body knew that this was the last Ka I needed to lock something in. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to say this in a very rationalized way. Like, I am a data-driven person. I am a very rational thinker. I'm an independent thinker, but I'm a rational thinker. I don't know what happened. I don't have to know what happened. I just have to humble myself to the experience that something beyond my understanding happened. And that we can all find ourselves in that position if we just get the fuck out of our own way.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my experience with near-death experience and the coma and the past life regressions and the psychedelics I've had in my life, I'm able to get out of my own way. And I rose out of the sarcophagus. I saw my beautiful goddess Frida's smiling face, still in her goddessness of holding space, just holding incredibly pure, angelic Isis space, Hathor space. And I see Matias. I'm a believer.
Yeah.
This magician, this wizard, this beautiful soul who has come back to just remind us all that we've been here before. We're always here. We're going to do this again. And we got to put the pieces back together. And I just saw that in him. I saw his friend holding space. I look over, I see Shadia holding this beautiful space of resonance and gravity that I've never seen from her. And there was something pure and innocent about the exploration of her power in beingness in that space. And I felt myself. And I can honestly say this, I can say the same thing you said to me 30 minutes ago. This was the most powerful experience I have ever had in my life. And I've had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
I've had a coma. I've had accidental past life regression experiences. I've had 42 ayahuascas. I've had a countless number of other psychedelic experiences. And this microdosed psilocybin, literally a nibble. And this was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt so grounded. I've never felt so centered. I've never felt so re-inspired. I've never felt so clear in my mission, and that the path that I'm walking is not the highest path. The path that I'm walking is the creation path. It's higher than the highest path. It exists because I'm walking it. And that was clear. And that's never been clear to me in anything else I've done. So I can guarantee you this, I'm renting out that pyramid.
Let's go.
I found out the price. I'm renting that pyramid overnight, and we're gonna go crazy in there. With intention. But that's the goal. It's maybe to do that like once a year for me. Like the realignment that I had in there was beyond anything I could even explain. I feel complete. I feel complete.
I mean, these things that we're saying, like, you have to understand the brotherhood that Mehcad and I have shared, and the amount of expansive experiences we've been involved with, right? And to declare these moments of the highest and the most significant experiences of our life happening, it's really profound. So I just want to let that land.
Like, let me put this in perspective. My father left me when I was 4 or 5 years old. I have healed that for the most part. I feel like 90% healed in ayahuasca. It's really caused me to be able to jump dimensions and go back to that 4-year-old in the bathtub and hug him and say, I'm your father now. I got you. And I've had that experience. This was more powerful.
Yeah.
This was more powerful than healing, than being able to jump timelines and go to the 4-year-old in the bathtub and tell him, no, your father didn't leave you because you weren't enough. Your father left you because he's not enough. And tell that little kid what he needs to hear and hold him physically, have a kinetic reaction to holding myself as a child. That happened through ayahuasca. And it couldn't hold a feather to what happened in the King's Chamber.
Mm-hmm. And what happened in the King's Chamber required every other step along your path. So somebody listening is like, let me just fucking skip the steps and go to Dendra, go to Osireion Temple, and then go to the King's Chamber.
I highly recommend you don't do that.
it just won't happen.
You'll have an experience. You'll have a different one.
Yeah,
They'll have an experience.
I think so. It was just a culmination moment, really, for both of us. But my journey wasn't actually done because the prophecy that Matias shared of feeling what it feels like to be a creator as a woman had to continue, and that really didn't hit till we were on the flight home. And I make it. I mean, it's a 2 a.m. flight out of Cairo. Cairo airport is fucking.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. I mean, like
Cairo's wonderful. Let's just preface that. Cairo's an incredible city. Definitely going back.
There's a lot of beautiful Egyptian people. Yeah, airports. There's like 4 security checkpoints, and they make it a point to fondle every one of your sacred objects. They pulled out my karipe and were just rubbing it around. I was like,
they were touching this on my neck, flipping it around.
Yeah, exactly. Like no, it's not every fucking.
It's like never touchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything that I would never let anybody touch. They were just grabbing. They would they just honed in.
I was like, did you wash your hands?
On the most offensive thing they could do to my stuff.
I put my nose in that. That's my kuripe, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we get through that, and we make it from the flight, and we were on the path. We make it from the flight Cairo to Dubai, and that flight was pretty tough. And we get into Dubai, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it home. Like, I didn't know if I needed to go to the hospital in Dubai because my pain was just overwhelming, and I'm just sweating, and that level of pain sustained for that long, it was coming in waves, and then
particularly on an airplane, it just makes it worse. Just amplifies everything.
So much worse.
It just amplifies everything.
But and Vi hadn't had any sleep, so she's trying to like bleary-eyed because I've been keeping her up with how much pain that I've been in, and she's been supporting me, and so she's taking a nap, and then Alana and Soraya are trying to help me, get me water, and we're all trying to make it through this together. We make it. I decide, all right, fuck it. I'm getting on this plane, and we're going to make it home. And I'll go to the hospital when I get home if I need to or whatever, but we're going to fucking make it.
Good move.
And so I'm in the plane, and it just get a little bit of peace, and then it just starts to rock me. And the pain was so severe, like so intense. Mm-hmm. And in one of the intensities of this experience, my third eye vision space, and no medicine at all, zero medicine at all at this point. Because I'm just sick, like I'm just in like the most pain. Mm-hmm. I'm just seeing like demons, and I'm seeing myself in this tunnel. And I'm like, I'm fucking stuck in this tunnel of hell. Mm-hmm. I'm stuck in this tunnel of hell. And then I'm like, what is this fucking tunnel? So I like burst out with my vision, and I see that I'm stuck in the belly of this fucking snake. Mm-hmm. And I have this knowledge that in the King's Chamber, there was this snake energy, not a benevolent snake, but a malevolent snake energy that had swallowed me. And so I'm like, fuck, I'm like stuck in this fucking snake. And I have a very sacred sword that I bring with me into my journeys, into my psychic space. I have sacred objects. But my sword is not meant to cut. It's a ceremonial sword that my mom gave me, and it's to claim ground as the kingdom. Right. It's to take empire and say, no, this is no longer empire. This is the kingdom, and to bring the beauty. Mm-hmm. So, but I was trying to cut with it because I was like, I gotta cut my way out of the snake like I was Drax, trying to go inside that intergalactic being and like cut his way out from the inside, you know? Yeah. But that didn't work. Yeah. So I was stuck. So then I grabbed...
It's a dull sword.
It's a dull sword.
Yeah.
It's not meant for cutting.
It's a butter sword.
It's not meant for cutting. Yeah. It has magical powers, not meant for cutting.
Exactly.
So I grabbed my staff, and I'm like, I'm going to walk out of this bitch like Gandalf. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to like push and walk out. So I walk through the belly of the snake. And again, no medicine, just in my vision space, racked with pain. Mm. And I walk my way out. And then I get to the jaws of the snake. And then the jaws open up as I'm pushing the staff through, creating the space. And then I wheel around, I get outside of the jaws, and the snake actually closes through the staff. The staff goes through the top of its head, but it didn't actually do anything to the snake. And now I'm just fending off the whole snake with this staff, and it's coming at me. It wants to swallow me again. I'm like, I cannot get swallowed by the snake. Maestro Hamilton had told me many, many years ago that if you get swallowed by a snake, you're encapsulated in a place where you no longer have access to your spiritual power. So all that talk about my ability to link myself to the love of Brahman and all of that would have been encapsulated in the body of the snake. So I was like, I don't want to be in this fucking snake. So I start calling on my allies in the astral space. And I call on Vailana, who has a deep, deep relationship with Kali. And I was like, Vailana in the Kali emanation, come help me. And she comes in like the warrior queen that she is, diamond warrior queen. And she, Kali energy, cuts off the head of the snake. And I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Like, fuck yeah. Except the snake, the snake didn't need a body to keep coming after me. So
they never do.
The head is still after me, and it's even more active and even more aggressive than it was before.
Right.
So I call in my brother Aaron, our brother Aaron, and he has allies that are these white lions, and the white lions start to surround the snake, and they start attacking in formation in different patterns and like helping me out, helping me in this fight as the snake's trying to swallow me. And I'm like, fuck. But still, the snake is like relentless, and I'm in this battle, just trying to fend it off and keep it from swallowing me, even though it's just a head and the lions are helping me. And then I'm like, I gotta call Mehcad. And you have a dragon that I've been fortunate enough to see in the medicine journeys that we've shared. You have a special dragon.
Yeah,
I call you in on your dragon, on your chimera-like dragon. And and you come in on your dragon and you ride right up to the side of that snake, and on the dragon, you just take a swipe like jacks, and bam, just haymaker, just smash the snake. And the snake's head goes swirling, spinning, twirling, and like smashes into some astral floor somewhere. And then you just leap off of your dragon, go onto the snake that's dazed from your haymaker. You grab it by the jaws, and like King Kong in that fucking movie, you just rip open the jaws and pull it apart. And so there's no longer a snake head. There's just two jaws, and it just dissolves into nothing.
Nice.
And you just stand over that thing like, yeah, I got you, bro. I got you, bro. And I was like,
that's a pretty good tagline too.
I was like, oh, fucking A, man. Thank you. And at that point, there was still like a lot of like demons in my visions, and Vi was guiding me to like help me deal with all of these things, all of this darkness and these kind of like psychic energies that were still, and I started to use all my tools and get some power. But still, so I'm out of that first crisis, the spiritual crisis. Things start to calm down. The demon's gone. I'm out of the snake. I have access to my spiritual power again, because I was like ready to give up. In that moment, it was dark. Like I was like, I don't know. I just don't know if I can go on. And I'm thinking of Marcus Luttrell and Vi's helping me, like just one line in the sand, just make it another minute, one more minute. There's a 14-hour flight, just one more minute. It's going to end at some point. Make it to the next minute. But I'm resisting and fighting and grappling with the pain. And then, through Vi's guidance and my own internal wisdom, it's like, what if you just surrendered completely to the pain and brought your awareness to the pain? And I was like, it's too painful. I can't do it. I fucking can't do it.
Yeah.
But I did it. And this deep pain right in my solar plexus. And I just started to meditate and allow that pain to expand. And it was overwhelming, the amount of pain. But there was a certain point where the pain just became a sensation.
Right.
The pain was just a sensation, and I was able to observe simply the sensation of it. And there was this like little click that happened in my consciousness where it was almost like spirit was like, and this is the lesson. This is the lesson of the initiation. And from that moment, anytime the pain would come back, I would just meditate and expand the pain, go into the pain, expand the pain, until it would reach this unbearable, and then it would switch and transmute, alchemize into just sensation. And then I could just hold the sensation without the attachment to the suffering that the sensation was causing because of my resistance to it.
Right.
So it disambiguated pain and suffering, and disambiguated pain from sensation. It was just sensation.
Right.
And it was part of life.
Right. And then and you can even make that into pleasure if you do it long enough, right?
Yeah, right. Like that's that, yeah.
Like that's
That's
some
the
Jedi
that's the
shit.
master.
Yeah,
That's
some
the
Jedi
ultimately the master level. But miraculously, I mean, this was a gastric ulcer. I like saw a doctor in Egypt, and I knew what it was. But after that point, it all really through psychosomatic, metaphysical ways started to heal, and it started to heal. And by the time I touched down in Houston, the pain was really gone. And it was like a fucking miracle. But it was made possible, I think, through my belief field of realizing that I'd learned the lesson. I'd felt the pain of what it was like to be a creator. I'd fulfilled that prophecy in a way. And not that I won't have to experience more pain, but I also saw how many ways in life that when a little fatigue comes or a little pain comes, I'll apply some salve or some soothe or some distraction instead of just being with the sensation of it and allowing it to actually reach its full potential, and then breaking it in alchemy by my awareness of it and then the transmutation of it. And, so for the last week, I've just been powering up. And then here in Montana, I came in maybe 70%, and then the mountains and the air and the loving fit for service community and all of you guys and everything, and Vi's ever present and consistent love and all of that, I was able to power up fully. And, this was, in my opinion, the greatest Fit for Service summit we've ever had.
I mean, listen, I've been to a few. This is a different level.
Yeah.
And I think it is because all of us are coming in with these Egyptian codes. But it's a testament to what you've been building for years. And, Hamilton said this a long time ago. Like, he said he started the beating of the drum in the quantum, right? And if you heard the drum beat, you were going to come this way, right? And you've created your own drum beat now. You've created your own frequency, your own wavelength. And I think the right people are finding that wavelength. And yes, there's something about the community, but there's something about the audacity of beating the drum that I want to give you credit for.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man.
And the drum beat is all in for all life.
It is.
And
have you explained that yet? Because
no.
even I had that wrong at first.
Yeah.
So please, your viewers need to know that.
So that's something that came through during a ceremony we had when we were liberating my father, and it came through Mark Gaffney, and he'd heard it before, but it came through in a crystallized form. He heard it from a brother, Christopher, and it came through, and it just became like this mantra that we had, which is, we're fully committed, not just to the end of our life, but to all life, to every life form in the cosmos, like the force of life, Eros, as opposed to the Sitra Achra, the upside down, the deadness of the universe, as they say in the Zohar, the Sitra Achra, the turning of the face from God, the upside down world, the Thanatos, the death, which is really the numbness, because death is actually just a transition into greater life.
It's more life. Yeah.
So, but it's the antithesis of the life.
It's the antimatter of life. Yeah.
So it's this commitment to all life, and this really started to come forward in a major way here in Montana. And there was a mudra.
Yeah.
There's a mudra that came through, and for the first time, I publicly shared it in the speech that I gave.
This is dope.
At the end.
This is so good.
So to tell the story of this mudra, we got to go back to Sedona, where we had Mark Gaffney, John Churchill, Waira, a bunch of, Aaron, a bunch of different, Von Lana, the whole fucking crew was there, right? Everybody was there in Sedona. And John and his wife were sharing they were about to lead us into a meditation, and they said, I want us to go into the first mudra, which is the baby mudra. And the baby mudra is holding your fist around your thumb. And it's what babies naturally do.
Mm-hmm.
They hold their fist around their thumb. Why they do that, I don't know. But babies just do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they call it the first mudra, the baby mudra. It's a mudra of innocence.
Mm.
And it flashed in my mind at that moment. I remembered that my first karate instructor, Tang Soo Do instructor, 10th degree black belt, Pat Johnson, when I was really young, because I started taking karate when I was really young. My mother is a Tang Soo Do black belt. My father was a red belt. Like they were in this practice. So he started teaching me when I was little, 3, 4 years old. So imagine maybe 4, let's say, 4-year-old Aubrey, and I'm doing, starting to learn karate from Pat Johnson. And he shows me that fist where I'm holding my thumb. And he says, this is what babies do. But when you practice karate, if you want to use your fist, you put your thumb outside of your hand. And that way you can punch. Because if you punch with your thumb on the inside, you'll break your thumb. You'll hurt yourself.
Right.
So if you want to punch, you have to move your thumb out to the outside. And that flashed just like I never remembered that moment till that one point in time.
Mm.
And then I just saw and I felt this energy move through me where I just took that where my thumb was on the inside of my hand and I lifted it up in the air as like a sign of standing for all life. The classic sign of revolution. I mean, this was what the Black Panthers had, right? Was the raising of the fist. Mm-hmm. And we have that, it's even an emoji. It's an emoji, right? It's like the raising of the fist, but it's with the thumb on the outside.
Right.
And with the thumb on the outside, there's the implied threat that that's a fist, that's a balled fist, and that fist could punch you. Right? That's what's implied with the thumb on the outside.
Right.
But when you raise the fist with the thumb on the inside, it's with the knowledge that, yes, you could still punch, but if you punched, it would hurt yourself as much as it hurt the one that you punched, which is the universal recognition that we all share in the field of life. And there is no way to punch an other without punching yourself.
Without punching yourself in some way, shape, or form.
In some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And so standing for all life, but with the awareness through the symbol of this mudra, that we know that we stand with everything we got, our full heart, our full power, but we know that if we ever use this fist, it's just hurting ourselves. Right. So it's the very last resort because it's mutual destruction every time we attack.
Right.
And so that came through as a sign of all in for all life and the spiritual awareness that we all share in this field of life.
Mm. I hope it catches on. I know it'll catch on because it just makes so much sense. And this being the fist of revolution and that revolution being materially justified in many ways, right?
For sure.
Whatever revolution it was. Didn't take into consideration that violence will always hurt me too.
Yep.
Right? And this one does. And I think it just goes past, our sacred cows, it goes past their polarity and cuts right to the chase. People are sick of certain things, but violence is the last course of action.
Yep. That's
beautiful.
That's it.
It's beautiful, man. Yeah.
And in this life, brother, it's like there's a quickening that's happening, where we're unlocking our potentials, we're remembering, we're gathering, and we're being attacked, of course, like all of those people who stand for value, who build, and I talked about this in the speech as well, build these temples in time, build these tribes, not in space, but in time, that are built in value itself, built in all in for all life consciousness. Like as we build this together, those forces that are fueled by the upside down, fueled by the Citra Akra, fueled by empire and the fear that love isn't available, this denial of our true nature, the intentional confusion, seeds of confusion and delusion that have been sowed, and the breaking of all of our lineages in so many ways intentionally. Like you think of the breaking of the lineages of the native people of this land that we're here. We're in the Lakota Sioux territory, right? They were banned just like in the temples. they were forbidden to sing and to dance.
Right. And to go to their own sacred spots.
And to go to their own, they were
Yeah.
forbidden from doing the thing that actually, so it was an intentional breaking
For
of
sure.
the spiritual power
For sure.
of people. And this happened universally
Right.
to all people. It happened to the Druids. It happened to the Hebrews. It happened to the Africans. It happened universally.
Right. Right.
And there's so much pain and so much trauma from all that. But now is the time for like all of those broken pieces to be recognized, acknowledged, loved, treated with maximum compassion, but also an invitation to say, we all have to come together on this team for life. Because right now, for the first time in history, it is actually existentially a life or death situation. Like we are on the precipice of, we're either going to make it through this narrow place, or we're going to collapse it in on itself and have to start fresh.
Either way will work. One way is less painful, and I'm like, it's like Matias said, the void is a singularity. So we either have to come together or we will be forced together. And that's what's going to bring about a new birth, a birthing place for this consciousness. Like it's going to come together or it will be forced together in some way. And I, for one, prefer this method.
Yeah. And look, if at the end of the day, we know that we came and we incarnated and we lived our life and we felt the beauty of it and we got to experience it and it was the final days of Earth and we gave it our heart and we gave it our love and we tapped into the field of Eros and we felt it. And then we would know that in the records of all time, in the sacred Akash, there were the ones who lived on this planet and they loved and they felt and they danced and they cried and they sung their song and they fought with everything they got with full knowledge of the truth of all of the cosmos. And whether they succeeded or whether they didn't, that ballad is going to be sung. And there's a deep peace that comes from the all in. To not, because the only place where I feel like I don't want to be at the very end is like, man, what if I would have went all in? What if I would have went all in for all life? Maybe just maybe that would have changed it, And I don't want to be there.
Being in the struggle of, so the African-American experience is what you're describing. It is the being in the struggle for all life. Because when you look at, particularly in this space-time, when you look at what the African-American has had to endure and this justified, materialized bitterness that pumps through every heartbeat that we have at being ripped from our homeland, having our language taken, having our spiritual resonance adjusted, having our gods taken from us. We are in the fight of saying, if you treat the least of us equal, that means you have to treat everybody equal. And that's the part that I think that people are starting to understand, is that African Americans have never been fighting for themselves. They've been fighting for all of humanity.
There's a saying from Jesus, that which you do to the least of us, you do to all of us.
Right.
You do to me.
Right.
And when he said me, he meant all life.
All of us, yeah.
He meant the Christ. He meant the all life, right? That which you do to the least of us, you do to me. And this is what you've been so focused on, this human equity consciousness, this idea of like, we can't leave anybody behind.
No. Even if that means that you had a head start. If you're feeling left out now, take my hand. Let's go together.
Yeah.
And that's the point I want to make. Building on your point about not wanting to get to the end of life going, man, I should have went all in for all life. The point is not to succeed in the revolution. The point is to acknowledge that we're in one. If you can acknowledge that we are in a conscious revolution, then that revolution is birthed in the spirit of those that are connected, of the initiated, of those that are experiencing the collective consciousness. Once enough of us wake up and say, Oh, we're in one. That's all it takes.
Yep.
And it will, the universe, Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, and it will. Just enough of us have to say and acknowledge that we're in a consciousness revolution.
Mm.
And that's all we got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the answers will unfold.
Yeah.
And then you'll get to the end of your life knowing that what you started, what you acknowledged, will play itself out. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but it won't have to go another 500 years of this shit.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the point.
Yeah. There's such liberation in moving beyond your own small needs and connecting to that telos, to that greater purpose.
Yeah.
When you can really step into the current of all in for all life, it can feel like maybe you don't get to make the same small choices, but actually there's such liberation in it because there's such purpose. Like we understand the telerotic nature, like the having a purpose, but feeling the eros the whole way, telos, direction, telerotic. So you're like, have direction and eros at the same time, and this kind of engagement with the vibrancy of life. So we're living a telerotic story. Exactly.
The Saturn and Jupiter energy, the creation energy and the direction energy.
Yeah.
Put it forward in time. And that's all we got to do.
That's all we got to do.
That's all we got to do. Acknowledge the fucking consciousness revolution. That's it.
And if you made it this far in the podcast without shutting it off, you're in it,
Good
baby.
for you.
You're in it, baby.
Then you have to recognize it. Let's go.
Yeah. We're talking to you at this point.
Yeah. All 6 of you who were left over. Going, these motherfuckers are psychotic.
Yeah. We have 4 new allies after this 3-hour podcast. Fuck yeah.
Holy shit.
It's for you 4 who were listening.
Dan, Roger, Stephanie, we know who you are.
You're out there.
You're out there.
You made it.
Those are 3 names that are likely here, too.
My brother, I love you so much,
I love
man.
you so much, man. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Thanks for being with me in this world and every other, man. This doesn't feel like the first time we've done this, and
no,
I don't feel like it's going to be like the last time we've done this, but let's make this one a story that we'll always tell. When our souls go and we tell the stories of the many lives, let's make this one filled with laughter, filled with love, filled with a few fucking shaking our head and like, damn.
Man, that shit was great.
That shit was wild. That shit was wild.
Yeah.
Through all the pain, through all the challenge, through all the beauty, like this is our story, and we hold the pen. You know, let's make it a fucking beautiful one as we are, brother.
My brother. I love you, man.
I love you too,
man.
man.
This dimension and all the others.
Amen. Amen. Love you guys too. And love everybody here. Love everybody. All in for all life.
There it is. Let's go.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.